really convey how I feel about the game. What I gained from this game as an experience is not comparable to any other game I've ever played, excluding my top one. What this game has offered to me, despite all of its poor quality,
you must adopt a passive playstyle with an Elden Ring.
Bullshit that is unavoidable hit set, and I'm already furious with these bosses.
Bullshit that is the unavoidable hit set.
Bullshit. The blatant input reading these bosses.
During that entire sequence, did the player in a balanced encounter have fair counter opportunity?
Elden Ring was on release and still is misrepresented by quote-unquote skill issues. People refusing to learn or change to FromSoft's newest work with copied opinions unsubstantiated by critics who don't understand the game, gaining millions of views, impacting public perception to a point of mass negativity due to a lack of understanding, misguiding many to a point of complete disorientation, to where the well of partially distilled discussion is now entirely poisoned forever. Players who try but don't try to learn, calling and blaming the game on false information, going about their messages in toxic ways, is just the worst type of people in this community. I was one of these people at one point. On my first playthrough, I blamed the game for its questionable design, then took to YouTube and Reddit for guidance, only finding information that told me that what I was struggling with was falsely unfair that I believed due to having no other reliable sources. Yet I didn't know it was false at the time, leading me to blame the game for things I didn't understand, calling it bullshit, with me being too egotistical and ignorant to go back and learn. Elden Ring is also misrepresented by cultists, toxic elitists who do understand the game but only choose to voice their opinions in toxic, obstinate, ignorant, and sometimes even hateful ways that only fuel the fire in this community, raising the amount of elitism, turning others away from realizing their mistakes, and instead feeling skill issues to be more ignorant, detracting others from having possibly the greatest gaming experience ever made. I was also one of these people at one point, making assumptions and saying rude shit to others over video game opinions, refusing to accept that there were flaws in the game. Of course, I'm only talking about a small minority of this fanbase. I know most of you guys are not like that. Most people are not any of these too. That's a small minority. This is something that's been bothering me ever since I made my Feeble King video. I got so many replies coming in from all sides, arguing for and against me. The discourse around Elden Ring, particularly boss design, was so misguided with so much misinformation and became such a shit show to where I decided to take matters into my own hands. I want to gather up my 1,000 total hours in Elden Ring and hopefully change some of your minds that most Elden Ring bosses are extremely fun, while also being fair, but at the same time, carrying a heap of garbage nonsense that cannot be excused. After the old king has fallen, a new one has to take his place, so I'll try to be the man for the job as a longtime fan of his. My only request is that I hope your mind is open to change with what I have to say. And if you're none of these two, then enjoy the show. Oh, and lastly, to introduce him, this is John Elden Ring. Basically, this character serves to show specific punishes or specific footage that I didn't manage to catch on my level 1 run. Let's begin. Elden Ring doesn't hold back, either for the better or for the worse, and that's embodied with the first main boss in the game, being Margit.
Are you ready to receive your ass beating, lil bro?
And hot damn, this is probably a top 10 most mechanically complex boss in the game. Cordyceps Head here uses a wide variety of attacks to test if you're really ready to face Elden Ring. Fast attacks, slow attacks, ranged attacks, anything you can think of, this guy's probably got one of them up his ass. As the tutorial boss, he teaches me the first 2 lessons of Elden Ring boss design. 1. You cannot heal in neutral anymore. A neutral state is when both the player and the boss after a true combo ender aren't doing anything. In this example here, I heal way too late after he does his true combo ender, leading me to be hit. Something that's found to be true in the entire game.
I can barely even get a fucking drink in neutral before the game just goes, ah. Oh shit. Oh, I thought she was done. Nah, that was kind of on me.
That is insane.
This is not a new thing and has been around since at least Dark Souls 2, with many of the bosses frequently doing this. The consistency is iffy, as it still is in Elden Ring, but the point is that this feature has been here for a decade and nobody complained. This, admittedly, did take a while for me to get used to, but I'm glad the tutorial boss teaches it. The point of this is to increase the difficulty for a more demanding and challenging game, which I find quite fun. And 2, to be persistent, not stubborn. I have no problem with struggling, but if it's too hard for me, then asking for help is never an issue. I used to have this problem as a guy who never wanted to use the internet or ask others for help, being very stubborn, since it would take away all value from the experience. But in the words of Jacob Geller,
especially if a game is hard, the only legitimate way through it is to do it alone, without guidance or help. The stink implies that having assistance makes victory less sweet, that getting support means an achievement is less genuine. This, I should point out, is not how any other learning in real life works. Imagine a math class where the only legitimate way to pass was exclusively using the textbook and never asking a question, or a workout regimen where you weren't allowed to learn technique from others because you should figure it out on your own. It's this rigidity of thinking that there's only one way to truly surmount a game's challenges that locks people into the controller-smashing, wall-punching realm of stuckness.
of course, on my first playthrough, I ain't pay attention to shit and I banged my head against the wall for 5 hours, complaining about not having fun. But we don't talk about that. So many of attacks can be faced with positioning-based openings, aka moving around the boss for you to hit him as he hits nothing. Low profilable attacks, which means to go under an attack as you hit the boss while he hits nothing, and jumpable attacks, which allow you to gain the most optimal amount of damage while hitting the boss as he hits nothing. Elden Ring is only roll slop if you make it that way. Low profiles and jumping openings are not new and has been around consistently since Dark Souls 1. Sure, they might not be as practical as the jumps and crouches in Elden Ring, but they were definitely there and consistent. I think From Software has always given you extra defensive options to make the gameplay more interesting. It's just up to you to utilize it in a fun way. Here's Mustafa low profiling Soul of Cinder's entire mage moveset. The point of these advanced mechanics is to deal damage at a point when you normally couldn't with standard roll hit gameplay. Seriously, try some of this crazy shit, bro. Executing some of these jumps, strafes, crouches, whatever, exponents the amount of fun you have in this game. Not to invalidate roll R1 gameplay either. Even on the most relentless and fastest bosses, there are still tons of openings that you can find just by hitting roll in R1 that keeps the game relentless and fun. He also has this move I call the positioning check. This move he does immediately comes out at nigh unreactable speeds at inconsistent points, making it seem like bullshit. However, he will only do this after certain combo enders, them being his one-handed overhand, his ground stab, and his carrion sword combo if you stand in front of him. The boss is telling to the player, hey, don't stand in front of me, strafe me the entire fight. This is further enforced with Margit having so many insane combos if you stand in front of him that it would feel unrealistic for a new player to be able to deal with it, but standing behind him cancels most of it, adding to this playstyle. I also like how his tail sweep acts as a positioning reset, so you can't hug his back all day while also doubling up as a jumping opening. My only main issue with this guy is the boss arena. Let me wail on this for a second here. These cliffs crumble at the edges and at my own sanity as the boss continuously turns his back to the cliff and runs away. On a boss you're intended to constantly strafe and circle around to cancel his combos, why the hell does he keep his back to the cliff? You can fight him near the cliff, but I think this is way too dangerous as you have a higher risk of falling off harder than Ember's upload schedule. A tier. Margit is more fun at level 1. The fight is so mechanically intricate for being the first boss and is tons of fun, but he has a few aspects that blow, which drag him down a bit. Blows dick and balls, not fire like our next boss, And hot damn is Godrick overlooked for being the second real boss of the game. FromSoft cooked on this guy. Godrick's moveset features a ton of extremely delayed axe swings, but his moveset really shines most in mid-range. His Fire Breath and 5-hit combo are the hardest to avoid at mid-range, but however, at close range are easily avoidable if you utilize some positioning based openings, where you could stand under the dragon's arm for free hits. He also has an attack I call the Storm Assault, which is his signature ability used by all knights in Stormvale. I think it's really creative and cool how the ability you've been getting warmed up to the entire level is used by the boss. His Storm Assault is very quick, but does almost no damage even on level 1, so it's fair and completely reactable. Anderson!
For something being unreactable.
The attack serves as a way to get players off of him to push you back to mid-range, making you find a new way to get close to him, which I find really fun. His combos are well telegraphed axe swings that are fun to dodge and jump. He has a fun, tight flow to combat as long as you hit in between the delays. One of my favorite attacks from him is the ground shockwave attack that you can do a jumping R2 on, which brings me to the next lesson of Elden Ring combat. Lesson 3. Any attack that is waist level or below is probably jumpable. Throughout this video, you will see me get better and better as a player at identifying these, so experiment my friend, see how you can make this game more fun than roll R1. I haven't found every jump opening in the game, this is just my experience. I suggest you experiment and find out what works for you. Try to find your own jumping openings because they add a lot of fun to the experience. Phase 2 erupts with some amazing voice acting and adds a couple fire extensions to previous moves. Even on level 1 with the unupgraded weapon, he died so quickly when entering Phase 2 that I can't say it's much more different from Phase 1, apart from some moves doing some more damage. A tier. Great presentation, solid, mostly great mechanics without going too crazy, exactly the way an early game boss should be, and great music. Another boss that is better at level 1. Past Godrick, we get to enter into one of my favorite views in the entire game. Liurnia, land of trees. 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 And trees for a good 50% of the zone. Mixed in with lobsters, revenants, and mages. FromSoft couldn't miss. They never have, and went 3 for 3 for the most annoying enemies in the game. After traversing through Sleepy Time, we enter Raya Lucaria, and I honestly think this is one of the most beautiful moments in the entire game. The Mage Library aesthetic is finally perfected here, with some of the most mystical visuals I've ever seen. Unfortunately, once again, FromSoft couldn't miss with the enemy variety. Here we have mages, dogs, and tanky undeads, an enemy placement that makes Shrine of Amana look calm. Shrine of Amana is actually, one of the best levels in the series if it wanted literal castration. Around halfway through the level, we encounter our next boss, the Red Wolf of Radagon. I kinda dislike how fast this boss moves with how overwhelming the magic can be at times. Legit, sometimes it can overlap to a point of sensory overload, but it's nothing too bad. The boss has a mixture of bites and spectral sword attacks, which is kinda cool, and you can jump some of them as well. Yeah, not much to say here, the fight is just good. Low B tier, about the same on level 1. Pushing up past bitch number 1, we get to fight bitch number 2. Renala comes with some creepy, completely left field presentation. Very rarely does the Soul series do horror or any form of creepiness right, and they hit the bullseye with this one. It's such an immersive fight. The children's singing adds so much to the atmosphere and soundtrack. The amazing slow-paced music, layered with the aforementioned singing, is just so amazing. With wait, you want to talk about the actual fight? Well, it's honestly just more annoying Deacons of the Deep. You basically hit a glowing kid 3 times, then wail like crazy on a boss, then die to trekking garbage you can't see falling from the sky. That's a one-shot on a normal level, and definitely a one-shot at level 1. I know it sounds like I'm being a reductionist, but that's pretty much all you're gonna get from this boss. Unless you want to consider her other qualities, like her boss arena. Yeah, the moon is really pretty, but realistically, I think it kinda Phase 2 is a boring chase to Relana, who spams magic for a majority of her attacks. No flow to combat, no enjoyment, not much mechanical complexity. You're just avoiding overwhelming amounts of magic and hitting the boss. Her summons suck as well and don't make the fight any more fun. In fact, actually the opposite. But since I'm on rune level 1+0 and deal such pathetic damage, I decided to have the genius idea of lobotomization, aka figuring out how her summons work. So basically, all the summons can be cancelled after specific attacks that you can bait out using positioning. The dogs can be cancelled after their lunging attack, so you should kite them out. The troll can be cancelled after a sweep into a slam, which you can go under him to bait out after his initial slam. The Bloodhound Knight can be stuck close to bait out his spinning attack, and the dragon can be baited at long range to do his slam. Yet none of that matters. You can kinda just ignore all the summons besides the Bloodhound Knight, since they don't pose much of a threat, and they're tracking your straight cheeks. So you can just rush down Redlana as the summons mindlessly flail around like an inflatable tube man. C tier. I love everything outside of the fight, and I've got a big soft spot for the space aesthetic, so that probably saves her from the boss being multiple tiers lower, worse at level 1. Speaking of aesthetics, let's take a detour to Siofra River. Siofra?
Shofra River, including Safria River, the Weep.
Shifra River, to fight the Ancestor Spirit. Honestly, seeing this area for the first time was magical for me first playthrough. The absolute highest echelon of feeling during art is magic. Something that doesn't feel like reality. Something supernatural. That's what a magical moment means to me. A moment where I can't believe what I'm seeing. This is one of few of them. I had so many questions. Was this even underground? I didn't know. Is this a real river? How did this place come to be? Ancestor Spirit is a calm one. It barely has any complexity or depth, but everything surrounding the fight is great at creating an enjoyable experience. It's a simple deer with some headbutts and some cool wisp attacks. It's a soothing fight. High B tier. I can't really give something so, for lack of a better term, bitch made higher than B, but everything else is S tier. Another boss who's better at level 1. Before we break into the royal capital, let's take a detour to the east to the accursed Aeonian land of rot, Caelid. Visiting here for the first time is an absolute joyride, or terror depending on the way you look at it, with both first views of it being incredible. The photography of Elden Ring and how this game sets you up for specific shots is unparalleled to any other game I've played. The framing for these views and how these vistas are set up makes for some of the most visually vibrant and beautiful areas I've ever seen. No game I've ever played can just create straight paintings, really illuminating the grandeur of the game everywhere I turn my camera. One of the best aspects about Dark Souls 1 for me was world tangibility, with the world shortcuts and realistic, mind-bending world design is now expanded times 10 with top-tier art direction to add. In Dark Souls 1, I could see the bottom of Blighttown from the top of Firelink, and from the bottom of Blighttown, I could see the top of Firelink. This was one of many magical moments in the game for me. The best way I can prove this is this shot in the DLC. Sick shit, I know. But besides that, from this cliff, I could see at least 6 areas with main remembrance bosses I could visit. That's Enir Elim where we fight Consort Radahn. That's Belurat where we fight the lion. Hey, that's the Furnace Golem, the guy I found earlier. Hey, that pillar at the top was where I was earlier. That castle at the bottom is Castle Ensis, where we fight Rylana. That mountain in the back is where Bale's at. See the cathedral on the left? That's Matir. See that tiny cliff all the way in the back? That's Shaman Village, where Marika's hometown was. It really feels like I'm traveling and experiencing a real world with so much to uncover that creates so many magical moments of immersion. This effect is done endlessly again and again and again, with every single area having such distinct geography and visuals that never feels like I'm in the same spot. Aside from Caelid being one of my favorite regions in the game, the final boss of it is even better.
gorging on them like a dog. Howling at the sky.
Radahn is the coolest boss ever made. I remember when entering the castle for the first time, I was hyped to fight a demigod, and by the end of his speech, scared shitless. His actual mechanics are great too, with the exception of the beginning. The beginning of his fight is an annoying run up to him, taking up around 30 seconds. It's cool the first couple of times, but attempt after attempt, it just becomes so grating to where it feels like a cheese grater on my balls. Reason being is because I'd say 70% of the time, he will pull out Aldrich's Arrow Rain from Dark Souls 3, which is horrible. Basically, with this attack, he'll cast a rain of fast-tracking arrows that track so quickly you almost have to avoid it on torrent. Basically, with this attack, he casts a rain of fast-tracking arrows that track so quickly you almost have to avoid it on torrent. Radahn 9 times out of 8 will stack attacks on top, and without torrent having a real dodge button, you can get stuck in a no-win situation, aka where you have no option but to die. On a normal level, this wouldn't be an issue because you can just tank the damage, but on level 1, it's an annoying one-shot. You have to pray to Gwyn that you can make it out alive. Before you type up the comment, yes, I know, there is a way to completely cancel the boss's entire arrow phase by using the obscure method of running back until he deloads. But using obscure mechanics to avoid integral parts of the fight is not what I'd call well-designed or fun. In fact, quite the opposite. Once you get a fight him face to face, Radahn becomes a pretty solid fight. Radahn utilizes lots of slow, dual-wielding greatsword swings that are generally pretty tight to dodge. You should continuously roll inward, but if you are having trouble recognizing his telegraphs, then stay at medium range shown here, and dive in for a punish once you can recognize it. Many of Radahn's openings are discoverable using positioning-based openings, aka openings where you can stand as you hit the boss as he hits nothing. Identifying these was quite fun in my experience. To give some examples, when he does his 4-hit Beyblade combo, you can lick his P nuts and hit him for the first 2 ways of this attack. Anytime he does his Cragblade or Starcaller Cry, you can hit his horse from behind. When he does his Roar combo, you can keep hugging his back for free openings, just to name a few. You can also punish his Meteor if you've got planters as big as his, but I would not count on it. Phase 2 is literal cinema. Now he's got the same openings as Phase 1, but with his gravity aesthetic tuned from a 3 to a 9. Gravity waves fired off left and right as cool tests of jumping, gravity rocks fired at you, and if you're perceptive enough, you can jump both hits of his gravity spiral. Low S tier. The boss's moveset and flow is great with some cool attacks, but is generally pretty simple compared to the top tier bosses and would typically be A tier. However, everything outside of the fight I love. From the build up to the cutscenes and the visuals, Radahn is better at level 1. Venturing back into the north from Liurnia, we can access the obligatory Golden Castle halfway point and enter the Land of Living Legends. Our first major roadblock of the run being the Draconic Tree Sentinel. Now, in my eyes, I see 2 ways to fight him. My left shows me the path to fighting him normally, which is by sticking to his club side and actually fighting him, with the other eye showing the right. Field of vision and right way to fight him. After all, it's my right to be correct as I struggle to write more puns in the script. In short, my best strategy is to strafe to his shield side, essentially limiting his moveset to a couple of basic shield bashes and swings, allowing for easy extended openings. You may call this cheese, but I find it fun. Trying to outposition this boss, causing him to do specific moves, is enjoyable, and offers a simple alternative for people like me struggling with his normal moveset, chock full of delays and similar looking animations and timings. You are free to just learn this guy's moveset for real, but this is just what I did. I also really do like his fireballs. They punish players who try to run away, and he will indefinitely keep spamming this if you're at long range. Each fireball is a rolling R1 opening at close range, so abuse that. It's an excessive amount of attacks for players playing the game poorly, but an excessive amount of windows for players playing the game right, which further enforces Lesson 1 that you can't heal in neutral. However, my main issue with this guy's fight is that his arena is really annoying. You can literally dodge his attacks correctly and still get hit because you didn't know a rock was behind you. Or if you're up against a sloped part of the arena, you can roll his fireball and the fireball will still detonate behind you, acting as a frame trap. Or an attack where you're trapped the frame you get out of an animation of your roll, which obviously is unfair BS. Mid to high B tier, around the same at level 1. Right before proceeding into the best area in the game, let's enter the domain of the Godskins. I will be covering the one specifically in Altus and the one at Volcano Manor. I would normally like both of these bosses, but they both have direct issues preventing me from fully engaging with them. I'll dismantle Skinny Boy first. The Godskin Apostle uses a pole blade, turning into a stretchy blender of a boss. I like how positioning factors heavily into this boss's phase too, as if you stay on the end of his attacks, it's quite overwhelming, but up close you get a free punish window. React and punish, react and punish. Not too bad, right? Wrong! This move right here. This is the exception that makes this fight so much worse than it could be. This one, officer, I didn't get much footage of it, but he has this one double slash attack that is extremely problematic. You can't roll them in one go, basically being a frame trap. You almost have to eat shit when avoiding this attack, as it's rough, especially on level 1 where it will just one-shot you for being unfair. You technically can roll both just with medium roll, but you have to go instantly. And that isn't possible for me personally due to so I have to just hold mid-range, constantly rolling back, playing for obvious openings, spamming longer range Ashes of War, because getting close range risks eating unavoidable damage. The only way I found to avoid this attack is to instantly outspace it the second you see movement. I do like this fight quite a bit, but this one move kills a lot of the experience for me, especially at level 1. Low B tier. After dismantling Skinny Boy, I'm now going to clean up Fat Boy, who has the same problem as him. A fun and engaging kit with a cool contorting moveset based around horizontal expansion rather than vertical. He's got some decent mechanics with a solid handful of jumpable attacks to pair along with nuance, and Chowder here is a good and fun fight. Except for this move right here. This one, officer. This is the exception that makes this fight so much worse than it could be. He has a move I call Bellywog, where he bellywogs your ass that is unavoidable damage on one shot where you were just eating death to death harder than Maliketh could ever deliver. So instead, I wait in mid, once again spamming Ashes of War for big openings, barely interacting with his actual moveset. I still like almost every other aspect of the fight, excluding this, and his fat roll attack. Fuck you. So B tier. On a normal level, this boss would be solid low A, and both of these attacks would be tolerable since they don't do any damage. But on level 1, both Godskins are worse. Pushing back up into Lane Dell. You are not fucking serious, right? The penultimate boss of this area is Godfrey. Godfrey, both in piss poor taste and piss poor color, a reskin version of one of the most discussed characters in the lands between appears to fight us. I really dislike this boss's inclusion at this spot, because lazily reskinning one of the most important characters to the entire story just comes out forced to me. It's not cool, it's just lame. I won't deny his mechanical excellence, however. Godfrey is a fun boss that utilizes lots of stomps that you can jump over and many strafes as well. Constantly following this boss around with his smooth and intuitive telegraphs makes for a fun little duel. These stomps are hard to roll through with lingering hitboxes to enforce jumping, fitting in a jumping heavy into his attack while the boss charges up another one brings a level of flow and depth that exponents the amount of enjoyment in the fight. Seriously, try to shit out bro on lighter weapons, it's a joyride. I would like to dock some points for just being a lazy reskin of a main boss. However, I think he's a lot of fun, so he gets to stay. PP Man is gonna get a B and is better at level 1. Whew! Finally, we gotta talk about one of my personal favorites, This is the point in the video where I bring a magnifying glass to the inner workings of boss mechanics and player depth, because this is really what I come to these games for. Fun. That being personified through the amazing boss battles, and Morgott is one of the best in the entire game. Morgott evolves in the original fantastic Margit moveset by essentially enhancing every single attack. You want daggers? Here's 3. You want swords? It rains swords. Spears, throws, charges, stabs, hammers of all kinds. Anything you could think of, this guy's probably got 10 of them up his ass. Before this, Margit rewarded your ability to constantly strafe him by cancelling some of his harder attacks by giving you extended openings. Now the boss is really putting that to the test, continuing his combos even if you're to his back, keeping up the flow of combat while still taking enough away if you stand in front of him to make this playstyle incentivized. For example, rolling his double knife to strafe him is an opening on Margit. However, on Morgott he continues the combo to test if you can keep moving that direction with precision. The best part of this is that you never lose openings during this process, just added flow. The period after the double knife is always a jumping R2 opening on katanas, with just enough time for you to roll out of the way, increasing the tight flow to combat, which I find intense, but once again, very enjoyable. Morgott takes all of the great combo stuff from Margit and enhances the difficulty to further accelerate the quality of the boss, while taking out all of the garbage. Remember that terrible arena we talked about? Well yeah, it's flat now with edges, and the boss won't backstep and sidestep every 5 seconds denying you of your openings. Most Souls bosses work pretty predictably. You see the first hit in the combo, you kinda know what combo the boss is gonna do for the next 5 seconds and respond accordingly. Morgott, however, has so many mix-ups and branching paths for his combos that you have to be half reacting on the fly and half using your set knowledge on the boss with how varied his attack patterns are. It leaves a hint of anticipation, yet prediction that can only be described as exhilarating. Many of his extenders are telegraphed by subtle animation cues, like having his hand on the floor at close range, signaling that he will do his helicopter attack. There's so many potential mix-ups that it feels like at any second he could just summon the Gate of Babylon on your ass, which is fun as shit. The second reason why Morgott is so spectacular is how he evolves on the Souls combat system, forcing the player to directionally roll to keep up with him. I find these higher standards much more fun, as it increases the intensity of the fight. Morgott does a crawling dash. You need to directionally roll with him to get a punish on that. Oh shit, he just reacted to your punish and sidesteps into his one-handed overhead. Now you need to directionally roll behind him to evade his deadly positioning check. There are lots of different directional roll requirements, like for his helicopter how you need to directionally roll top left to go under it. His sword and hammer spin demand you roll backwards since it's too fast for you to roll in any other direction. He has an extended opening afterward, that's your window to attack. Lesson 4 of Elden Ring gameplay. Delayed attacks are either your recovery window for stamina, or health, or your damage phase. Boss punishes aren't just as simple as after the attack or after the combo now, but in between attacks to enhance the flow to combat based on player decision. This is the next level to Souls combat and I really love it. It doesn't really sound like much, but in a fight like Morgott that moves so quickly, it really helps over time in building a fun and fair fight. Lastly, one of the main reasons why he's so great is because he has a tight flow to combat. What made previous Souls games so fun, despite a lack of complexity and mix-ups or interesting ways to play, is flow to combat. You can have a basic fight like champion Gundyr become an absolute joyride due to how smooth and tight every single swing and dodge feels. The perfect boss flow is what I call it, and in Morgott's fight, the intensity and complexity is cranked from like a 5 to a 10. Every attack feels almost always perfect for me to just get one hit in before he immediately revs up the next attack. Just look at this amazing stuff, it's pure fun, how could you hate on this, bro? Combining all of the best aspects from previous Souls bosses allows for an absolutely incredible battle, one that makes me feel like I'm locked into a duel with another warrior until death. The unpredictability while you're locked in the zone allows you to achieve such a flow state, so enjoyable that it brings an absolutely locked state of feeling that no other Souls game can replicate with how unpredictable, tight, and fun this boss fight feels. The only thing I have to really complain about is when he does a lot of one-note combo ending attacks. Like, come on bro, you can't give me this peak and then just deliver this barf where you keep running away. The boss eventually continued to deliver more barf, as phase 2 is where Morgott continues to shit all over the arena. Every slam Morgott now has an extremely slow geyser explosion that limits your positioning even further. I'm assuming they're meant to serve as a positioning lock, but you can just ignore the shit to be honest and you'll be fine. Phase 2 generally doesn't change much about the fight, but does maintain most of the amazing stuff from Phase 1. Added with a ton of depth, as the amount of jumpable, low profilable, and strafable attacks are insane, once again adding so much more replay value and experimentation to the boss, and you've got yourself a recipe for a masterpiece. High S tier. On a normal level, he has way too little HP, being decimated quickly, which is truly a shame, but on level 1, I can fight him to my heart's content. Exponentially better at level 1. To tie up a loose end mentioned earlier, let's proceed past the Smo ripoff to fight Rykard, Lord of Blasphemy. Every swing in this fight packs so much oomph. A standard C or B tier fight is now tuned the hell up, literally giving you a weapon to make every single attack and dodge a cinematic spectacle, enhancing the enjoyment of the fight tenfold. The boss doesn't have very many mix-ups or positioning based openings or anything crazy like that. Just intuit and roll, motherfucker. His signature triple bite combo can be optimally avoided with what I call an all-win situation. When Rykard does the first bite, you can roll it, but if he does a second one, then you can also do a jumping R1 over it and roll the third hit. If Rykard doesn't follow up after the first bite, you still respond instantly with a jumping R1, being a near optimal punish. Hence the name all-win situation. No matter what the boss does, you're always gonna win. Either jump the attack and get an optimal punish, or get a near optimal punish. One little smelly aspect about the boss is that he will constantly move towards you, which is kind of annoying, so after every punish, run to your left or right so as to not get cornered to make moves like his poison spit unavoidable damage. He does have one problematic attack however, I call the Lava Quake. The God-devouring serpent will stick its head under the ground to fling debris at you, and to my knowledge, this move is undodgeable even if you are frame perfect on the rolls. You can't run away, it's unjumpable, you can't low profile it, aka going under it. So, is this move fair? Does this sound like unavoidable damage to you? Ding ding ding, let me show you what I made. Jet's bullshit attack flowchart. I made a flowchart to tell you if a move is unfair or not based off my personal criteria. For example, Morgott's positioning check is pretty much unreactable, but it is easily predictable and it can be outpositioned, so it is completely fair. Now, let's talk about Lava Quake. It is reactable, but you can't avoid it with your standard base mechanics. So, what can you do? Lesson 5 of Elden Ring combat. If you want to outdistance any attack or gap close, then you should use the sprint jump, a technique that allows you to travel extremely far distances in short-term bursts. This is superior and faster than normally running for short-term distances because the jump allows you to gain so much traction, it's insane. In this case, you could sprint jump the Lava Quake to the left or right, easily avoiding the attack. Additionally, you may also hold the block button while doing it to not lose momentum after the jump. It's very effective on moves like PCR's Meteor or Maliketh's Death Ball. The sprint jump method will practically be used countless times in this video, so I hope you inherit the strategy. This attack in the first place is a very predictable positioning check anyway, adding to the fairness of it, as if you're long range, he will use this to often punish your positioning. Stay mid-range and don't completely run away. In phase 2, Rykard now uses the Blasphemous Blade, bouncing and swinging at you, offering tons of jumping heavy openings, because any attack that hits waist level or below, you can probably jump. This gives room for optimal openings and a tighter flow to combat, which is more fun. Rykard's ultimate anime attack is what I call the Rancor Storm. If you see this on rune level 1, you are fucked. Here, Rykard summons an absolute hellscape on your ass with what feels like the concept of death, chasing you in the 9th layer as you try to escape the absolute bombardment of deathly souls. As cool as this attack is, on level 1 it basically means certain death, with how massively overwhelming all the skulls are, overlapped with his attacks. Straight up, this can lead to some no-win situations, dude. There's so much crap on my screen. I thought I was playing a Souls game, bro. What's my soul? The tarnish or the obligatory bloodstain? With so much genuine visual clutter on the screen, it's really risky to avoid so many rancors and attacks at the same time. So, as an alternative, aka the pussy way out, when he starts the attack, it's better if you just spam the Ash of War during the startup, which unfortunately trivializes the boss. It basically hit stuns him to death, which I'm afraid, dear viewer, is a bit disappointing since the rest of his moveset is pretty great, apart from this one bad hitbox. On my winning attempt, he used the attack at low HP, and by this point, I was hoping to rush him down before he activated and... Come on, bitch, you're low. You're low. You're low. Please, please. We had killed each other at the exact same time, begging to Gwyn that the kill actually counted. I returned and... Hello? May I please have my souls? Please? 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 Yeah! My reward saved, and I thankfully came out 100,000 runes successful, baby. Rykard is mid A tier. On a normal level, I might put him at B due to how easy you can just destroy him, but on level 1, where I have no FP, so I can't be completely reliant on the Ash of War, can't just tank his Rancor Storm, and where every attack one-shots me, it feels so exhilarating with such a weak character fighting this impossibly large threat. Better at level 1. It's time for the impeccable boss roster to start forming cracks, as Fire Giant on RL1 is so sleepy time that somehow, in FromSoft's most difficult and attentive game that I've played to date, he serves as visual and audible NyQuil. This is the biggest boss that FromSoft has made to my knowledge, so the only way to fight him is to clip his toenails, as you try to read his telegraphs based off the twitches of his toes. I generally don't have too much problem with the first phase, because I've adapted to his horrid camera problems and can tell all of his moves by the 1 degree incline of his grippers. But for anybody else, the fight is generally boring as hell with zero flow, low to no amount of jumping openings, no fun positioning requirements, or really anything of value with a bazillion HP. I also hate how this boss creates no-win situations at times where you have no choice but to die. He can roll up against a tree in which there's nothing you can do, as the boss stacks attacks for a bullshit death as you constantly chase him down to elongate the already dragged length of the fight, compounded by a garbage arena that fucks up his punish window so sometimes you can't even hit him on a melee character. One tip for the boss: when he starts the fight, run up on this rock. He will either usually do his scoop or his shield slam. With his scoop, you can easily double jump it on torrent, and with the elevated rocks, making the scoop attack much easier to avoid. However, if he does a slam, then you can just dive in on torrent. The one redeeming factor about his fight, however, is at least he's cool. But the fight is still ass. Lots of his new attacks look awesome at the expense of pretty boring gameplay. Once again, there's two main ways to fight him in my eyes. Either stand in front of him and turn him into a snooze town slog with Dark Souls 2 level mechanics, where he just swings his arms that move at the speed of molasses in January, compounded with way too much HP to make this smelly turd smellier. Or you can go to his nuts and hit him, then he runs away, then you get back on torrent and hit his nuts again. Rinse and repeat for 50 minutes. Both ways are resident sleeper level methods to kill a sleep town level boss. Since I don't have the patience or temper to fight a Dark Souls 2 boss in slow motion that one-shots me to deal a pixel of damage an hour, I just go under him. Oh, yeah, and his arena continues to fuck up his attacks, which, by the way, let me tell you something. Any fire breath attack in the game is probably a can of ass, straight up. These attacks will ricochet and randomly stray in different directions to fuck you up. This damage is not predictable or preventable and is left up to complete RNG. His arena is sloped, so of course the fire is going to ricochet everywhere, unbeknownst to the player, causing a cheap death that is unpredictable, unpreventable, and unavoidable bullshit damage that you could not have avoided in the slightest. The problems where he stacks attacks is exacerbated in this phase, as he can straight up create more no-win situations where you have no choice but to die, and every death sends you back to his horrible phase 1 so you can experience the biggest slog in the series that makes Ancient Dragon and Aldia's runtime feel like an instant reverie compared to this fucking fight. I started to lose faith around this point in the run. I foresaw many deaths due to this boss's awful camera, bullshit of stacking attacks, fire bounces, bloated HP bar, etc. Me being level 1 only magnified these issues, leading me to believe that this wasn't a valuable experience at all, doing Elden Ring at level 1. The thought of it was so daunting. Despite only spending an hour on the boss so far, it pushed me to my limits already, and I thought back to my older times with these games. My positive memories of traversing Dark Souls 1 for the first time, when everything was so much simpler and fun, back when the games were so much more enjoyable. That was never reality. In my first playthrough of my first Souls game, Dark Souls 1, I hated it. The game was always so hard, it always had something to kill me. But the feeling of euphoria, the feeling of overcoming something hard and learning about self-growth and perseverance. To take on a challenge, no matter how bullshit or fair it was, I always took it on, which exponented my personal growth. And that's what kept me running. By the end, it made me sad and conflicted that my journey of self-growth had ended and that was it. The odd feeling of hating something so difficult and dreadful, yet once it's gone you realize how incredible the experience was from start to finish, not only from an emotional perspective, but from a design one as well. That's when it hit me. I was doing the exact same thing that so many other players do today. People who can't beat the bosses on their own terms, but also refuse to use alternatives just to make themselves frustrated and bored with the game. But it's not just about refusing summons or busted options. It's about refusing to adapt at all. I wasn't rejecting alternatives. I was rejecting trial and error itself. And by doing that, I was setting myself up for frustration in the exact same way. If I had the same attitude I did right now about giving up after only an hour, where would that have gotten me in Dark Souls? These games have always been about trial and error, and persevering against the impossible even when the challenge isn't fair at times. Applying the same attitude of giving up on something I love so early because of one rocky ride would have stopped me from experiencing the most legendary experience in any piece of art ever. If the game was easy and catered to my outdated expectations of difficulty, like in previous games, I would be complaining that it didn't make me feel like how Dark Souls 1 did the first time, regardless of quality. This is why I never personally connected with Dark Souls 3. It was just too easy. I wanted that magical experience of self-growth that no other Souls game had come close to matching. I needed to hear this. I was doing it to myself. If I was going to have a valuable experience, struggle was going to be there to stop me. Pain is the gatekeeper of a glorious destiny. Thanks, Lupine, for the wake-up call. Just like that with what happened with Rykard, we killed each other at the exact same time. I swear this isn't a scripted run. Luckily, that counted as a kill, and I wouldn't have to repeat this slog of a boss again. I didn't get the rewards unlike Rykard, but I was satisfied enough. Fuck this boss, fuck Fire Giant, and its entire race. Godfrey and Marika were justified in wiping him out. E tier. This fight is exponentially worse at level 1. After mountaintops, we get ready to commit a cardinal sin, that being to burn the Erd Tree at the cost of Melina's life. Hold on, no. Give me a sec to wail on this because Melina is the universal symbol of wasted potential. First, let's talk about the purpose of a maiden and what makes a good one, in my opinion. The purpose of a Souls Maiden, at least with what I would like, would be to establish a connection with the player as your level up lady to help give some exposition on the world. In Dark Souls 1, you can level up at any bonfire, which is the most efficient method of leveling. But if I'm gonna waste my time to talk to you every time, and I want to level up, you might as well give me some form of connection to the world. You know, make it not seem like a hassle. What's really the point of a close side character if they're not going to enhance the game or plot in any way? A decent example of this is the Dark Souls 3 Firekeeper. She is kind of a subservient robot to you admittedly, but some of the interactions you can have with her I find valuable. You can give her a Firekeeper soul or a Firekeeper eyes to expand her options as a maiden, so she grows with you on her journey, giving her more options as a level up lady. She even responds to some of your emotes, giving her some personality despite not really changing much as a character. The two limits of the Dark Souls 3 Firekeeper was that 1, she was absolutely loyal to you, which limited a lot of the character possibilities you had, and 2, she had to stay in one location all the time, so she could only comment on specific actions and events in the world, rather than be a guide the entire time. Melina solves both of these problems, as she is loyal, but also willing to grant you destined death if you become Lord of Frenzied Flame, adding some real motivation and mystery behind her character. And she always moves with you. What could have been cool is at certain sites of grace, the farther you get into the game, she tells us about her past or how she feels, just like how Ronnie does the farther you get into the game. Another way they could have added depth to your character is just by asking casual questions like where we plan to go next, what we think of the weather or the view, you know, something to just make her seem like a real person. You know, I could probably ask SOTE.AI and get some more personality in the writing out of her than the game itself, bro. I think her functioning like Weiss from Nier Replicant, or for best comparison, Sophia and Gemini from Liza P, in my opinion, would have made her much more cared for. As, at least for me, when I saw her die, I was like, shh, okay. Return to the main storyline. We burn the Erd Tree, which transports us to crumbling Farum Azula. While I adore the layout of this legacy dungeon, I think the area is limited a lot by its enemy variety. Not to say that the enemy encounters here aren't enjoyable, a lot of them are, but with such a small variety of enemy encounters for an endgame dungeon, it, for me at least, doesn't feel like there's enough. Limited enemy variety plagues the entire area, and not just plagues, but kills all enjoyment with the next boss, being a patient of the symptoms that affect the entire legacy dungeon. Being critical has been the frames that I've been putting on to talk about a lot of this game, but it's about time I take my moist critical lens off and put on my hater glasses because whoo, this boss sucks ass. Look, I know. Ulo made a video discussing how their AI works and how they are technically fair, score 1 for the Jobas. Basically, the closer one to you is more aggressive, and the one farther back is more passive. His video makes it seem like they could be a really good boss in theory, but in practice, there, simply put, isn't enough contingencies in their AI to account for how much bullshit there is. The ideal way to fight these two is to have Fat Boy up front while Skinny Boy spams fireballs in the back, since if you reverse their positions, Skinny Bro has a much faster moveset. So when Fat Boy snipes you, it's a lot harder to manage. Essentially, moderate speed guy and slow guy is more tolerable than fast guy and slow guy. Make sense? When fighting the fat guy, bait out his rapier combos for distance so it's much easier to separate the two, like how you'd fight the Abyss Watchers. At least like this, they are manageable, and after the initial gank, it's a good fight. Despite the strat and their AIs working like this, you could still end up in no-win situation after no-win situation where they just don't stop attacking. Sometimes they would just eliminate your openings or have frame trap combos where there's nothing you can do. You should focus on a 1v1 with Fat Bro, because then the fight will be fair, but then they can gank you off screen, which will one-shot you at level 1, so you should free cam, but if you free cam, then you can't focus on specific timings for the delays and fast reaction checks, so you get one shot, so you should alternate doing this shit, but on controller, it's so fucking ass, and it hurts my hand, and I got overexertion strains on my hand because the control scheme is shit! This was the only boss in the entire run that he used summons on because, well, fuck Godskin Duo. If the game doesn't respect me, you know, I just kind of feel obligated to not respect its mechanics back. Sleep pots are an option, but I found summons to be effective enough. The pillars are also useful, until they're not. Why? Fuck you. And why does a boss this poorly designed have so much fucking health? In total, they have 26,000 HP. Why? They have more HP than Morgott, Maliketh, Radahn, Wolf of Radagon, Putrescent Knight, Divine Beast Dancing Lion, and even fucking Elden Beast. Why does the shitty gank boss have more HP than the final boss? Past the horrible gank phase, I'd like to say that the 1v1 is fine, but then I kept dying half the time to my awful ass F tier. If I only had to kill 2 of them, that'd be fine. If I had to fight 4 Godskins, 2 of each, but they work as individual fights, that'd also be fine. But in a brutal gank like this, where they can revive each other, is just straight awful. This should be obvious, but this boss is far worse at level 1. Moving on from the second worst main boss in the game, we return to one of the main reasons why I was so eager to do this run. Maliketh is one of the most exhilarating bosses in the entire game. Which starts with the Beast Clergyman. This is a boss that wields a dagger swinging at extremely quick and precise speeds, which can very quickly become overwhelming and feel like it's unfair. However, like with almost everything in Elden Ring, there's an inner complexity to the boss that makes him extremely predictable. Tell me how challenge runners can AI loop the boss to doing the exact same combo ender multiple times in a row. Do you think they just get consistently lucky? No, because here's lesson 6 of Elden Ring combat. The majority of bosses have positioning based extenders and combos that instantly read where you stand to do specific moves. This is not bad game design or an unfortunate curse, but rather an enjoyable blessing in my opinion. This is not new, and positioning based extenders has consistently existed since Dark Souls 3, if not before. To provide an example, are you close to Maliketh during this attack? Then he'll come down with a slam to punish you for being close. Are you far? He'll launch a 4-hit projectile combo I call the air juggle. Are you close to him during this attack? He'll come with a bestial sling. Are you far away from him after this attack? He'll toss a boulder at you. This instant positioning read doesn't just serve as a cheap way for the boss to immediately attack once you go out of range and try to heal. It's a consistent strategy that allows you to choose the biggest windows for you to heal, find optimal punishes, or drag out his extenders for the most amount of fun. I find this much more consistent, adaptive, engaging, and enjoyable than previous bosses who just cancel their combos in my face for no apparent reason and don't even count as openings for extended periods of waiting. The Beast Clergyman will start the majority of his attacks from his dagger, so if you're struggling with this fight, stare at his right arm. He has many reaction checks and fast attacks that are easily reactable if you mash that roll button the instant you see movement. The boss also has dummy amount of strafe, positioning based, and jumping openings to further the depth of the boss that are all very fun to pull off. Any beast slash attack you can land a jumping heavy on, which I found very fun to discover and experiment with. His drag sweep, you could do a jumping backward heavy on it, or you can strafe it. If you're using a lighter weapon on his double swing, you can land a jumping R1. The possibilities here are endless. Beast Clergyman will constantly pull back with Bestial Sling, which encourages players to roll into him to punish this attack. This is probably my favorite move from him, as the possibility of him pulling this out after any attack, similarly to Morgott, gives me a sense of excitement and danger, knowing that at any point he could immediately pull back or continue with predictable extenders. It feels like I'm dodging straight bullets every time I nail it. This style of rolling inward frequently throughout the entire first phase, not just with his bestial slings, but also with his boulder tosses, which you can go under for a free opening, or his side jab, where you can use a jumping R2 into his shoulder for a positioning based opening by going inward. If you are struggling on this boss, you can consistently pull back to mid range to continuously bait him out to do the same slam combo ender, which is an easy charged R2 opening. You can consistently loop him to do this multiple times in a row. However, I don't find that personally enjoyable, so I never do it. An easy S tier first phase, but now let's get to Malik, the Black Babe. First, Maliketh has tons of depth to his fight that allows you to jump so many of his attacks for optimal punishes, making this fight even more fun than it already is. All of his animations come out in such a wild, animalistic frenzy that adds so much charm to the fight, really distinguishing it from the others. The boss constantly jumping and flying backwards makes it feel so rewarding when you actually hit him at close range. He has many attacks that are absolutely brutal if you try to run away. His death ball, double spin, and anime combo all do colossal amounts of damage, even for endgame players, because no endgame boss should have you playing like a rookie and not be punished for it. Seriously, this shit is brutal. However, it can literally all be shut down faster than an anti-Semitic Kanye Twitter post if you just know how to work around it by staying close to him. At point blank, this boss is extremely fair, while sometimes feeling like he gives too much opening, admittedly. Like, dude, on a katana, I can poise break this guy literally every 10 seconds. However, at long range, he is an absolute nightmare. One of Maliketh's most problematic attacks is the death ball, which you could sprint jump, which always feels orgasmic to land. Seriously, try it out if you got the defenses or balls for it. Some of his attacks may come off intuitive to some, and I've also seen some claim that the punish of something is not valid, or say an attack is poorly designed, because it is not quote-unquote intuitive. Your level of intuition only comes from your level of experimentation. If you play the past games only rolling and never experimenting or thinking about your approach, then you're going to find everything in the game unintuitive. I have genuinely talked to people who couldn't intuit that if you can't roll an attack, you should outspace it. If you're gonna fight a boss and spend some time on it, you might as well amplify your experience by enhancing the level of fun and complexity you'll have in the boss fight. This is not a new thing, and attacks since Dark Souls 1 have had you think this way. If I cannot roll Manus' combo, then maybe I should outdistance it. If Gale keeps punishing me for rolling backwards on his thrust, maybe I should roll inward. Going back to Dark Souls 2 after this run, I found strafing and low profiling extremely intuitive to a shocking degree that this has always existed. You just needed to experiment. How sick the aesthetic of the boss is, mixed in with so much depth, results in a top tier contender in the entire game. The footage should just honestly speak for itself. I mean, come on, this fight just looks and plays incredible. High S tier. Maliketh is one of the best examples of how positioning can dramatically change a fight, resulting in a completely different experience from person to person. On a normal level, Maliketh is 0 HP and a pathetic amount of poise with extremely overtuned damage, making him balancing wise absolutely awful with a great moveset. But on level 1, where everything has been one-shotting me for a while and his HP bar is well sized, all of the problems with the boss are solved. Another boss who is much better at level 1. Before claiming the Rune of Destined Death, let's drop down to one of the most cinematic and spectacular spectacles ever specced into a FromSoft game. Dragon Lord Placidusax. Dragon Lord Ball Z Sax is straight up the most mechanically underrated boss in Elden Ring, and maybe From's entire catalog of games, because this fight is a masterpiece in positioning. First tip, you should constantly be locking on and off for his fight, as this will make his fight much easier to process. Placidusax will start by summoning Red Lightning, which you can roll, but has a very tight timing to it, which I find enjoyable. You can just run and outposition it, but it makes the fight less fun, so I stand still. When you do this, you should be at his hind legs, because standing almost anywhere else provides some camera problems in my experience. When fighting this boss at his hind legs, your camera should be pointing down at his body to watch out for his dragon head, which is the telegraph for breathing fire. Eventually, his head starts to face you, typically after 3 or 4 lightning strikes, in which he will breathe fire down his body. At this point, I reposition myself to the other side of his tail, as he breathes fire down one side of his body, with the tail creatively acting as the divider for the hitbox. If you're down the left side of his body, he can do an immediate positioning check fire breath, which is a giant oversized bullshit hitbox if you try to run to the other side of his body. Which, admittedly, I think is a bit overkill since it doesn't make any sense. However, similarly to Maliketh's anime blade attack, this is a brutal positioning check. It is easiest to jump over his dragon heads and reposition yourself at his other hand, since going around his tail is ridiculously hard. The boss is forcing you to play its game in creative ways, not just hugging his ass, which I find quite enjoyable. The boss has 2 positioning resets, so you can't just hug his ass all day, with gap closers and area denial attacks that will constantly make you run back to keep the challenge to players to see if they can keep getting back to that spot at his hind legs. If you stand at his sides, he can do a wing slam followed up by a lightning claw, which you need to avoid. If you stand in front of him while running back to him, he can do a lightning claw, where you need to directionally roll into him as he will follow up with a standing dual fire breath area denial attack. For this, you need to run to his left side hind leg to get a positioning based opening off. Sprint jump helps a lot here, so I'd recommend it. If you're at his arms, then he can do a lightning claw backswipe, where the boss then follows up with a rock sling, which is hard to roll but easily avoidable if you just reposition yourself at the other side of his body. I absolutely do not see how you can call this boss a statue. He constantly resets positioning, forces directional rolls, and positioning, or else you'll be killed by bullshit fire that will double hit you on the ground for not respecting the boss. Phase 2 kicks it up with absolute cinema. It rains and pours lightning, as the once extremely positioning based fight is now kicked up to a traditional Souls fight. The boss will constantly teleport to mix you up Lothric and Lorien style with extremely tight dodge windows, with jumpable claw attacks, and more positioning based openings, really testing all your skills. After every single attack, you can land a rolling R1, so it always feels fair. When the boss combines extremely tight dodge windows, jump and positioning based openings, and unpredictable teleporting mix-ups with extremely strict fire-based positioning locks, this fight elevates itself to becoming among the best in the entire game. Oh yeah, and tip for the boss. When you roll his lightning slams, they are actually very tight and seem deceptive, so exactly when the claw slams into the floor, roll both to avoid the impact and the shockwave. Don't roll before the claw slams, roll when the claw hits the floor. Phase 3 kicks it up a notch with an insane double laser that I could tell you the specific rolling and positioning strat for, but let's be real, even I don't know how to dodge this shit, dog. So the brainless method I utilize to deal with this attack is to run to the walls of the arena. Then when he dive bombs into the wall, it allows him to aim at who knows what, as you wail on his cheeks. In this scenario, I would recommend implementing Lesson 7, learning to play for posture break against tanky bosses. The posture break playstyle uses lots of charged heavies and jumping attacks while being aggressive to quickly stagger the boss, allowing for lots of ripostes. This works as an effective way to deal with tanky bosses. If you're struggling with straight up anything in the game, particularly bosses with long openings like this one, you should toss in as many charged heavies as you can for an easy posture break, compounding your damage. This helps to make every boss a considerable amount easier if you're struggling with them. I don't really use it often since I find that the bosses die too quickly, but for tanky slugs like Dragon Lord Putrescent Knight, Hell yeah, I'll do it. Most bosses in the game will test one main skill, like positioning skills, with a bit of rolling, or heavily base it upon roll timings and memorization with a bit of positioning. But very rarely, any boss tests everything a player can use to the absolute maximum, damn near. You need to be ready to lock on for directional rolls, then roll timings tight as an ass to pull off multiple times in a row, then instantly adapt to an insane fire breath where you need to lock off, changing your entire position, running instantly. Then you need to instantly adapt and lock on to a teleporting reaction check with jumps and positioning based openings for optimal hits. On a normal level, you can ignore all of Placidusax's intense mechanics and tank his fire, but on level 1, I get one shot, so I have to play Placidusax's game of insane positioning. Mid to high S tier, exponentially better on level 1. One thing I want to address about the boss is the oversimplification of him by just summing him up to be a tail smacking simulator. I'm going to tell you right now, you can greatly limit this boss's positioning responses to you by hugging his tail, making him really basic with only 3 to 5 attacks. While this is true that the boss does turn boring if you just hug his tail, you can easily optimize the fun out of every single boss fight in the game. If we're going to judge a boss by force locking their moveset through positioning, then let's treat every other boss by the same standard. Beast Clergyman now only has the same boring combo extender by staying mid-range. Godfrey now, instead of turning into one of the most dynamic fights in the game, literally only has one attack if you strafe right of him, and you'll continuously keep doing so. Mesmer now only has one combo and 2 boring one-note attacks if you keep dragging his combos out for the same triple thrust. Let's bring it back to the older games. This is not an Elden Ring thing. Twin Princess literally now only has one move. Look, my point here is that you can optimize the fun out of every single boss in the game with a hyper-specific, curated strategy to break the boss's AI or to limit their options. By doing anything but that, you allow yourself to have 10 times the fun without losing that much more punish. Going back to claim the rune of Destined Death, we get to transform Leyndell into the Ashen Capital, as the home of the Erdtree and the once golden lively city we explored, now transformed to ashes and cinders. As your character's feet step over the remains of a once great civilization, we get to fight one of my favorite fights in the entire game. Guardian Ofnir, the All-Knowing! You know it, I know it. This boss is a rancid, nasty, decaying, rotted, sunburnt, decrepit, putrid, malformed shit. For one of the most helpful and intriguing characters in the entire game, it turns out to be one of the biggest failures in the entire series. Gideon fails on all levels to provide anything of positive value or substance, and turns the fight into an utter seizure central sensory overlord disco fuck as you suffer the might of FromSoft's take on Armored Core 6 a year too early. Seriously though, for lighter weapons, you should confidently walk up to him and cancel every input he does. If you're on a medium weapon like a katana, running R1s and running R2s are your best friend, similarly to what I do in the clip. If you're on a colossal weapon, you should spam crouching R1s to repeatedly hit stun him to death, or spam Ashes of War like Giant Hunt. Really, just use anything to cheese this fucker. Nobody likes Gideon Ofnir. F tier, 10 times worse at level 1. Bitch. Off your ass. Oh, you're done. You're done. Ooh, you're dead. You're dead. You're cooked, buddy. Wandanla. You're finished. Rock you. Now we can finally approach what I consider to be one of the best bosses in the game. Godfrey! Godfrey, not piss-free, improves on everything that made the original, or I guess ripoff, good. All of the great complexity and depth of piss-free is exponented here. There's so many more moves you could jump, low profile, strafe, etc. to make for a fantastic time with experimentation. The stomps mentioned earlier are utilized in almost every single combo, keeping up the perfect flow to combat mentioned earlier in the Morgott section. At 75% HP, he will do a mini phase transition where he enters phase 1.5, where every stomp and ground impact is turned into a shockwave that spans the entire arena. The design philosophy of the stomp is further intensified as you can't run anymore, you have to engage with the boss. At first, I found this overwhelming, but now I want to match his intensity and find it exhilarating. Give me more, bring me all the AoEs, motherfucker. It feels like every stomp and slam has so much weight to it, adding to the intensity of the fight. A solid S tier phase 1 for sure. In phase 2, he rips the living shit out of his tiger. Now he can powerbomb you to the moon and back. Stomp every second, making phase 1's groundwork look like a coughing baby compared to the hydrogen bomb that is phase 2's insanity. And tear the earth with his hands. Horolu is not like past bosses in the series, where you can reasonably intuit their combos after seeing them a couple of times. No. Horolu is not like Margit or Morgott, where the fight is 50% unpredictability and 50% memorization of his patterns. I am 100% sure he has no preset combos, and his combo game is entirely random. Like, there's so much going on so quickly with borderline no consistency or pattern that I can discern. Like, holy shit, chill the fuck out, man. Thought that Leaf Hurricane led into that double swing? Nope. That leads into a grab that if you don't recognize instantly, you're done. Thought that high kick was punishable? Fuck you. It can lead into a right stomp, or a grab, or a quick left uppercut, or a slow right uppercut, or a Leaf Hurricane, or a one-legged drop kick, or a kick up, or a power bomb. 2 of them actually, or a double palm slam, or a delayed hand swipe barrage. Keep in mind, this is one attack, 9 mix-ups off of one attack that I could be missing more of. Imagine that, but you add in 10 more extenders, and you apply that to every single move in his entire kit that are not combo enders. I'm fairly certain nearly everything about this boss can just combo straight up into anything, making this boss an unpredictable nightmare, or on my terms, an absolutely thrilling test of instant reaction and memory for some of the most fun I've ever had in any game ever. This boss has combos that can end in 2 hits, or he can straight up combo for minutes on end without stopping, littered with jumping heavy openings, low profiles, mid delay openings, positioning based openings, etc. I love how wild and diverse his mechanics are, which relay the shocking and raw nature of his presentation. Naturally, with such complexity, it leads into the most difficult boss in the run thus far. The attempts sank into hours, the hours turning into days, and the days transforming into a week. A week of trying to learn a boss with the most varied and eccentric mix-ups in the entire game. I cannot for the life of me, even after 25 hours of attempts, find any consistency in his combo extensions, or when he ends. Fighting a boss where I never know what's coming next makes it so ridiculously difficult to find openings during the learning process, it's borderline insanity. But there is one very large, easy but to trivialize Horolu's unpredictable nightmare. One big but that most of you are familiar with. This is what you, boys and girls, and everything in between have. His butt. You can greatly simplify his moveset by just constantly moving top right. You can just keep rolling the same direction to cancel the majority of his combos Margit style and hug his ass until he dies. I really don't want to play him this way because it's so boring. Transforming the most unpredictable boss ever to something as archaic and simple as Dark Souls 1 is just sad, man. However, my options are either to fight an unpredictable, bloodthirsty bull to have some enjoyment, or simplify the boss to a boring rolling right simulator. Anything in between is losing efficiency or enjoyment. Death after death after death for a week straight, I just could not take it anymore. The insanely erratic warrior standing in front of me kept beating me down as made some attacks literally unavoidable. Eventually I just said fuck it, and despite how much I enjoy Horaloo, the boss was stretching me thin. It really does suck that it's so easy to break his tracking to cancel his combos. It's almost a challenge on itself actually to learn how to stay in front of him with how mobile he is. Godfrey is not S tier, phase 1 already is, but phase 2 elevates him to an absolutely slobberknocker face melter of a battle that cannot be properly described, only felt with how much enjoyment I get from phase 2 when fighting him face to face. Double S tier, top 1 in the series, and exponentially better on level 1.
Tarnished. Thy strength befits a crown.
Taking a detour from Godfrey to access Melina and Mohg, we need to fight 3 side characters before getting to the shit that actually matters. So, we venture out to Castle Sol to fight Nile, and look, I understand Commander Nile is a commander, but that didn't have to come at the cost of almost ruining his fight. 2 copy and pasted Banished Knight bastards are extremely unnecessary. This is not good game design, especially when we're in a tiny ass telephone booth of a boss room. But I'm fighting 3 max Holloways. So, once again, I'm forced to hold mid-range since getting close risks me being blended to Kingdom Fuck. So staying ranged, spamming Ashes of War, basically edging them, is my main strategy, which results in possibly the most psychotic neutral trait of my life. Once you get rid of them, Nile turns out to be quite a fun fight. Lots of his delayed attacks provide perfect room for one swing, creating a perfect flow to combat with flashy lightning attacks that you can jump, while having some challenging positioning based extenders, such as him attacking behind his back after a soaring axe kick. High B tier, around the same at level 1, the summons make the fight worse, but the boss is better. Riding through the blinding winds of the frigid cratered outfields, led by a trail of lights, we descended to a dungeon to a fight I missed. For another cosmic horror space themed boss, FromSoft once again sold the bag and beat me with it until I cried. In short, the boss is like Medea from Dark Souls 3. Stick by its head and target it for optimal damage while avoiding some cool nebulas and other space splurge. The boss is like Ancestor Spirit and relies much more on one-note attacks without many combos, more like a Dark Souls 1 boss rather than having lots of mix-ups, which I prefer. I also really dislike his meteor attack since it's very hard to run or avoid with so much crap going on with such a crazy screen shake that I couldn't find a consistent way to avoid it. You kinda just have to shit in one hand and hope in the other and see what feels up first, and 9 times out of 10, I get shitted on. There is a consistent method to avoid this attack by directionally running top left at a specific timing, but it's so obscure that I don't think it's well designed. He also has a horrible grab hitbox, but it isn't that common, so it wasn't really a problem for me. A mid-fight with some cool visuals. Low B. Around the same at level 1. Pushing up further into the north, we enter the Halleck Tree. The area design-wise is quite unique, serving as a parallel to the Erd Tree. Loretta's got the sick war sickle that she swings around in fast motions, with mostly normal timings, which, is refreshing. Give me a boss that doesn't have dementia-ridden timings for once. It's fun stuff, until she spams her phalanxes or her little projectiles. Then she does it again. And again, 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 and again. Fuck you! This boss will not stop with the Toho Armored Core 6 gameplay while my character is stuck in Dark Souls 2. My goat could never, all hail Bot Night Gale, Her projectiles can overlap her own attacks to often screw you over in a no-win situation. On a normal level, you can just eat or trade the damage, or just dodge it and stop being a skill issue like me. But on level 1, where we get one shot by everything, it basically means I just run away until she's open again, and then I run away. It's quite boring. It's really only her phalanx spam in particular that's the issue. Her bow attacks I find quite fun, and her magic sickle attacks are fun to avoid as well. I guess my Loretta was just pissy that day. This horse lady will get high C tier. On a normal level she'd be A, and on level 1 she'd probably be high A if she just barely used her phalanxes like Rolana. But when 70% of my gameplay is just running away and waiting, it ain't it. This boss is kinda weird, since if she doesn't spam it, then she's much better at level 1. But if she does, like mine, then the fight is much worse at level 1. Depends on the RNG you get, but for me, it was worse. One thing about Elden Ring I feel is massively overblown is the issue of reskins. I don't have a problem with regular enemies being used as bosses in the early game. These enemies are simple and still offer a good experience while being obviously insignificant figures to the world, so I don't have much issue with them being used as normal enemies later. This is not a thing only applicable to Elden Ring, but Dark Souls 1 also does this numerous times, sometimes in good taste and sometimes in bad. I remember fighting that beast man of Farum Azula on my first playthrough, enjoying the fight, then fighting him later as a normal enemy. I didn't mind that at all, since I knew it was unreasonable for everything to be entirely unique, and I'm still getting a good fight anyway, so why should I complain? The same goes for Erdtree Avatars, Knights Cavalry, Tree Sentinels, Tibia Mariners, Leonine Misbegottens, etc. My only problem comes when these enemies are used too much, or they don't offer a good combat experience like the Erdtree Burial Watchdogs or Crystallians. Main boss reskins I'm a little bit more conflicted with. Margit's reskin on Altus Plateau I have no issue with, because it helps build up the narrative with your rivalry with Morgott, adding in more dialogue as well as the fight being an extremely fun encounter. Estelle is also safe from this, because on your way to the Estelle before Lake of Rot, there is literally an Estelle shooting rocks at you that is very hard to miss. Why does no one talk about this? This is evident to me that there are multiple Estelles across the world, so his reskin never offended me.
Who thought it was a good idea to reuse the Ancestor Spirit and Astal boss encounters.
Ruined by being recycled later in the game, and it's so hard to just ignore that.
The other bosses like Sewer Mode, Ghost Loretta, Piss Free, and the Godskin Duo are The game would be better off without those bosses being reskinned there, but it's not like it's a detriment to the game. I think I feel this way because these are all good fights, and if I'm having fun, then nothing else really matters that much. But to clarify, I wouldn't mind the Godskins as a field boss, since they don't really seem significant enough to warrant a main boss fight. But dude, forcing them to be required in a shitty gank is absolutely ass backwards design. There does come a point where Elden Ring crosses the line with its reskin use. It's much less about the reskin itself, but more about how they use it. I'll stick my review for him in right now, but Regal Ancestor Spirit is an interesting case. The boss is damn near in the same exact area as the regular Ancestor Spirit, has the exact same gimmick of lighting obelisks to reach him, and the moveset is, from what I can tell, 90% similar. Almost reskinning one of the most immersive and unique fights of the game, only to jack up his stats, and a handful of attacks to make him run away and heal is annoying. Coupled with arbitrarily making him a remembrance for what shit no reason is so bizarre to me. Look, I know he has new attacks added that are good, but I don't think there's enough to justify his existence. But I am just astounded at what the fuck a Godfrey is. Please, FromSoft lore hunters, I need a justification for this guy. What the fuck is a Godfrey the Grafted? This might sound hyperbolic, but this boss is just a straight up spit in the player's face. Still, for the majority of Elden Ring, I think the reskins do harm the game, as many enemies and bosses are reused too much like dragons. But overall, I do think the problem is overblown. After all the second fiddles and side characters are done and dusted, we finally get to another one of my favorites, Mohg, Lord of Blood. As the leader of the best faction of the game, I gotta have some respect for him. By the way, Fuck the Frenzied Flame, and fuck the Golden Order too. We stay repping the blood. Hello? No, I was just joking for a YouTube video. Mohg will start his fights with consistently delayed trident swings that all have a similar tempo to each one of them. Just like Nile, hitting in between his swings is optimal, creating a tight flow to combat. Phase 1 is the perfect testing grounds for you to test out what attacks you can jump and what you can't, so I advise doing that if possible. Phase 2 kicks off with This move is not avoidable by any means and cannot be stopped. This is the definition of complete bullshit. Damage you cannot avoid under any circumstance. This is complete bullshit, but I love it. Fighting an endgame boss with less heals forces me to play more carefully in one of the most visually and mechanically striking attacks ever, while giving you 3 free heal openings in phase 1 if you stand on his left for a positioning based opening. Honestly, I think this is just more creative than it is unfair, but you can take it for what you will. Phase 2 of Mohg cements him in as one of my favorite bosses of all time, as another positioning based masterpiece. The strong flow to combat is now even tighter, with every swing he does throwing blood fire everywhere, making Maria's phase 3 look like water balloons compared to the tsunami of blood that Mohg brings. You can't run away, dear Tarnished, you have to play his game. Moving away or anywhere else other than point blank risks getting cratered by his blood flame, or hits them to death at level 1. If you're not in his face the entire fight, your positioning is fucked. With the threat of being one shot, you have to engage with the boss. Mohg almost never goes passive now and is so relentless, with so much complex positioning which constantly changes, so you have to think about the direction you roll while you're fighting him, which I find electrifying. From knew that staying close to the boss all the time without the boss moving would somewhat negate the intense game of positioning you have here, so some of his attacks force you away from him while the blood fire is around you, so you need to creatively find ways to avoid his attacks. For example, his shower in phase 2, you can do a jumping back right heavy to clip his wing on the way down. This attack is actually an opening. Not only that, but Mohg also has moves where he flies up in the air and charges at you with attacks that completely reset positioning. You need to follow him around and predict his trajectory in the air to roll to his location. The entire battlefield is changed completely, and now you need to instantly adapt to the new Bloodflame climate, which is such a thrill every single time. The boss now paints the battlefield in creative colors across the canvas that you need to instantly adapt to, whatever that may look like. It should be obvious by now, but Mohg is absolutely incredible. Using my monkey brain for the tight dodge timings and my thinking brain for where to roll and position is ridiculously fun every single time. Another tip for the boss is that sometimes he will randomly go passive in neutral, so to counter this, if he stands still for more than a second, you can just jumping heavy him in neutral, which allows you to low profile whatever combo starter he does next. To my knowledge, you are always safe doing this, even on colossal weapons. To prove the consistency of this strategy, I did get hitless on Mohg. Aside from that one straight piece of fucking blood fire that shouldn't hit me, fuck you. Mohg has one major weakness, however, and it's that he's jank as a motherfucker. Bad hitbox on bad hitbox on bad hitbox. It's like I'm playing Dark Souls 2. What the fuck? Not only that, why the hell do his tombstones lock off my camera? It's so dumb. Why do the tombstones stop Mohg from moving? In a positioning-based fight, why would you limit positioning with garbage in the way? It doesn't make sense. These two issues are pretty uncommon, so it doesn't knock them down too much, but I'll have to take it into consideration. Regardless, however, Mohg once again reaches such a high point of quality with complex positioning, depth, tons of low profiles, jumps, strafes, compounded with a powerful aesthetic and presentation, topped with a top 10 soundtrack in the series, has made him so much fun for me that my words won't do him justice. Just fight him. Mohg is double S tier, top 1 of this series above Hoarah, exponentially better at level 1. Finally, to finish up the base game, we have Melina, Blade of Miquella. And I gotta say, this is one of the most fairly balanced Alright, DLC time, boys. The intro to the DLC is one of the most intriguing and jaw-dropping shots I've ever seen in any piece of art ever. Once again, knowing that everything in front of you is completely tangible and explorable filled me with a sense of wonder that only Elden Ring could create, aside from the actual Shadowtree. As I said earlier, these are magical moments that are so inconceivably beautiful that you've got to appreciate them while you have them. Pushing up into the first Legacy dungeon allows me to meet with a Divine Beast Dancing Lion, one of the most garbage bosses in Elden Ring. I did like his presentation, and the concept as a Chinese dancing lion but as a boss was really cool. However, his camera was just so ass, smashing me into the wall, pressing my character up against it, P-Hub shower style, dog. Like, damn, I know there's 2 men in there, but my girl ain't made for DP. Slow down, Rayquaza and Tyrone. I was getting pretty annoyed by the boss, admittedly, and was hesitant to ask for help from others. I want to do things my way. No help, no summons, and no other sources of reference. But it was getting increasingly harder to tolerate the boss with all of its weird camera issues. Being put in such a struggle state reminded me of some of the core lessons that may be applicable to this fight. Maybe I'm missing out on something obvious, and that was precisely the case. Maybe a positioning requirement or free camming the boss. I remembered the words of Jacob Geller.
Implies that having assistance makes a victory less sweet, that getting support means an achievement is less genuine. This, I should point out, is not how any other learning in real life works.
You are not required to learn anything in life this way. Souls games are no different. Remember, let's be persistent, not stubborn. I understand the value of wanting to do everything blind. And yes, finding out stuff by yourself is much better than doing it with help, right? But if it comes to the serious cost of your time, emotions, or experience, then it's just simply not worth it. There is nothing wrong with asking for help. Forcing yourself to have a harder or worse time for yourself is entirely self-inflicted, and a self-limiting aspect of my mindset that did me no favors, only inhibiting my experience. And you know what? Sometimes it is best for me not to look up anything and figure things out myself. And if I insisted on that being the case, then stop bitching and pull your big boy pants on when you're stuck. I had to face this realization myself when I was stuck on Maliketh on my second playthrough. For 22 brutal hours, Maliketh beat me into the floor, not because of persistence, but stubbornness. It wasn't until I went out of my way to ask others for help that I changed my firmly ingrained ways and vastly accelerated my learning and enjoyment of the game. Yes, part of the enjoyment of the game is discovering and fighting out things by yourself, but most of the enjoyment does come from the actual execution. Once you know how to dodge attack, the fun does not come from learning it again. That's not possible. The fun comes from always executing it over and over again. The game would have been more fun if I just asked for help, instead of residing in my horrible, miserable mindset. So I did the thing. I asked for help, and thanks to my friend Devil Hunter, he actually told me how to fight the boss. It's thanks to him that I realized that the camera wasn't bad if you were long range or mid range. After asking for some advice and experimenting, I realized that you can just hold mid-range and dive in to punish the boss, completely fixing the camera issues. You have to do this while staying away from walls, since if your camera's close to a wall, then the fight can turn into complete headassery where your head is up your ass, ending the run. Finding out how to consistently position myself against the boss not to mess up my camera while fighting him, I found to be an enjoyable challenge. Once you grasp the strategy of holding mid, then diving in, the beast becomes among the most special bosses in the game, offering a fun and extremely clearly telegraphed fight that uses a creative mix of spacing and aggression. When playing like a monkey for the fuck of it, I started spamming jumping heavies toward his back, and I started to avoid some of his attacks, which I found odd. Eventually, with some experimentation, I actually learned that when he does his tail sweep, you can do a jumping heavy inward to get in between the humps of his body, which was always so much fun to execute, while having a small enough recovery on my katana to roll out of his extender. The boss will constantly switch elements, testing multiple aspects of your game. Lightning being about quick thinking positioning skills, or if you're perceptive enough, jumps since you can go over the lightning, ice testing more precise jumps, and wind testing spacing. I really enjoy the amplifications made on the base moveset. He does have some problems about not finishing his combos even if I'm standing in his face, but it's not too bad. I'm gonna stick the lion in A tier. Another positioning masterpiece, for the most part. I think staying away from the arena walls is a little bit excessive. Learning to space and dive in is a fun switch up from traditional Souls gameplay. Compounded with the lightning and the ice, really testing positioning, I did enjoy. But being forced to hold the center of the stage due to the excessively small arena, I don't find enjoyable. Extremely unnecessary even. If the boss runs into a corner, you're better off not punishing him at all, because there's a chance that he can trap you in the corner or the wall, so I just lose an opening waiting for him to hit me again. It's really not that much of an issue, but when you have such a tight positioning based boss and you add more crap to overload it, I don't really think it's a good design decision and borders to overtuned. Still though, better at level 1. One thing I do absolutely have to praise in this DLC is the map's layout, or interconnectivity so to speak. They matched DS1 once again with how vertically intricate the map's design here is. Once you learn how the layers of the map work when you explore enough, almost every area in the DLC can be reasonably intuited and reached, while still feeling a bit obscure on the actual path to get there, leaving an ounce of mystery to your travels. The visuals of the map as well communicate strong design language, as well to get from here to there, which I find fascinating. The interconnectivity and layout of the map, coupled with the most stellar visuals I've ever seen in any piece of art ever, and you have some of my favorite moments in these games. It's like I'm playing a prettier, modern, and actually finished Dark Souls 1. The reason why I bring this up is because in order to access Mesmer, you normally need to beat Rylana. I was exploring to get to Castle Ensis to get to Mesmer, but got lost exploring to intuitively find an alternative route to the Shadowkeep, blowing my mind. Like, this was legit magical, dude. I did not believe that the side quest I was doing out of curiosity legit led me to the main quest I was doing, rivaling some of the best moments in Dark Souls 1 for me. This effect is repeated over and over again in this DLC. I just can't praise it enough. While we're at it, let's talk about Rylana, the boss with the worst naming convention in the entire series. Nice typo, buddy. Who the hell even is this? Even worse than the boss arena, character design and presentation is some of the most insipid I've ever seen in any game. This could literally be some guy or America under that suit of armor, and I would not know. Okay, the bad's out the way. Let's talk about why this is the second best fight in FromSoft history. This boss fight is spectacular. From made a mechanical masterpiece in the second most complex and deep boss in the entire game right here. When fighting Rylana, generally, I think there are two ways to fight her that'll massively shape your view on her. Either outdistancing the boss like a bitch, or fighting her like a man. The same design philosophy that was mentioned in Hoaraloo's fight is the same here, with so many branching combos, so many varied attacks, and so many mix-ups to where the boss is almost unpredictable. The boss is straight up infinite depth thanks to her razor-thin hitboxes. Everything in this fight is experimentable. She has entire combos where you can jump every single hit for optimal punishes. She has entire combos that you can low profile if you're low on stamina. She has entire combos that you can strafe if you have no stamina. FromSoft created a safe, inside hiding, a mechanical fucking masterpiece, unlocked by the mentality and willingness to experiment. I keep finding new punishes, like if you're on a katana for her double overhand attack, you can land a jumping R2 into a jumping R2, or you can low profile both hits, or you can strafe both hits. Expand your mind, as anything lower than waist level is jumpable, and anything head level or higher is low profilable. I had tons of fun creating openings for myself in this fight, combined with inventing lots of my own personal punishes that made this fight extremely fun to learn. The fact that it came so naturally and was so wildly intuitive for me to figure out was an absolute joyride, and made me feel like anything was possible. I was genuinely learning something new each attempt. It's like I was clicking with the boss in real time. Learning when to heal in between her combos using spacing was also extremely fun. One thing I also really appreciate about the boss is her explosion extensions in Phase 2. Initially at face value, they enforce directional rolling and positioning. However, up close, they're actually a test of jumping and low profiling, with many ways to flip every single attack as long as you remain perceptive. Her usual 5-hit spell combo is also a healing and attack window if you stay close to her, which I found quite useful when fighting her. Dude, the footage should just absolutely speak for itself. This boss's room for complexity and player depth is through the roof, pushing her past the likes of Hoaraloo and Moog when it comes to enjoyment in the fight. I don't even care if she has phalanxes in her fight, because they are so rarely used that they more often add to the fight when it comes to directional rules and positioning, rather than take away from it, while also giving room for low profiles, which always feels fun to execute. The Moon Queen's sister gets a high S tier from me. I kinda want to put this boss higher, but one big thing that stopped me from doing so was I have an average. Another reason is that despite being better fights than everybody else on this list so far, I can't give double S tier to a boss that fails on basically every level besides fight. When it comes to the cool factor, soundtrack, boss arena, character design, etc., there's about a nothing burger and a half here. Those factors matter much less when compared to the mechanics, but those side aspects really matter when it comes to crafting the perfect encounter. Hell, Rykard is the complete opposite of this boss. He's a basic fight, but cracked in all of the qualities I just mentioned. If you aren't big on boss mechanics, you won't really get with her very well, but if you're her type, hell yeah, you'll make one hell of a couple, bro. Yeah, better at level 1. Past Castle Ensis, we use the alternative path to get to Shadowkeep since I don't feel like fighting the fat-ass hippo, which allows us to climb through the Shadowkeep. Once again, I think I'll have to suck this DLC's dick a little bit more, because in this run where I was trying to reach Messmer, I got distracted by going through a second route. Through this second route, I intuitively found an alternative path to Messmer. It made me really feel like I was a stealthy and creative shinobi, better than Sekiro ever did. The top of this area has the second coming of Gale, Messmer. I have never seen a boss so well received since Slave Knight Gale. It seems like everybody loves him almost to the same degree, and to be fair, I'd have to agree as well. Messmer's use of fire as he tosses it in the air and coats his weapon in it I think is a cool and creative way to make him attack, as well as adding a flame-based extender on it, further enforcing good positioning and directional rolls. I also like how the boss has many positioning-based extenders to keep you on your toes. Almost all of Mesmer's fiery stabs and swings, you can hit him in between, or wait, allowing the player to have a choice between aggression and stamina regeneration. But, if you've been following along and have been experimenting with your jumps, then you'd learn that nearly every single stab and sweep from Mesmer can be jumped or low profiled. I mean nearly every single one, whether it is fire or not, can be punished with a jumping heavy for optimal punishes. For his double stab, you can create an all-win situation, aka a situation where you will always punish the boss optimally, as after the double stab, you can immediately do a jumping heavy that will low profile the delayed stab follow-up, or he can do a quick sweep which you will just jump over. It quickly became one of my favorite punishes in the game to execute, and left me feeling pretty proud every single time I did it, considering I invented it on my own. Mesmer's assault, or what I call firefowl dance if you roll back right or back left, at a specific timing is also a crouch healing window or a crouched R2 opening if you can properly roll at the right space. Phase 2 presents us with Mesmer casually gouging out his own eye and bringing out the Abyssal Serpent, looking like a ripoff Malenia, but aside from that, Mesmer does get easier in this phase with most of his extenders being taken out of the fight. The fun, however, is still maintained, as the big snakes do feel uber fun to dodge, with another perfect flow to combat, so it does keep the boat afloat, just in another way. Less challenge and more cinema. The one move I kind of have an issue with is the Snake Assault. Not because it's hard to avoid, you can just sprint up at point blank, but hot damn do the hitboxes suck. I'm about to see red, dude! I don't have too much to say about Mesmer, everybody already knows why. Fun boss that's really cool with a bangin' ass soundtrack. Mid-S tier. Afterwards, we proceed down to the Stone Coven Fissure to fight Putrescent Knight. Here we have Fat Orphan of Kos on a horse, and he swings at you and rides on his horse. He has a lot of cool jumping openings and has some cool fire extensions in phase 2 that you can also jump. One thing I liked about the boss was his horse and knight combo attack that is by far his best move. You can jump over him and his horse for some cool style points, but yeah, that's about it. The fight is extremely basic complexity wise, but he does have some great depth to him, so I'd give him mid B, and he's around the same at level 1. I think mechanically he probably is around high B to low A tier, but there's a certain way this boss moves and telegraphs his swings that throws me off a bit. The worst part about the boss, however, was actually getting to him. You basically have to play Battlefield in a Souls game as you painfully dart your way through the Call of Duty Warzone, getting shot up more than 50%. I didn't have stealth tools during this section because my dumbass thought it would be easy to run through. It took me 8 hours. Next, let's discuss Commander Gaius. Hogrider from Clash Royale here loves to come out with this charge that is extremely tight to roll. Some might call this move bullshit. Real? Bottom text. No, it's not. On light roll, Gaius' charge is literally a normal attack. Seriously, Gaius' charge on light roll is straight up a normal attack. Just roll. On mid roll, however, it is much more tight, but you can just dodge it normally, or if it makes it easier, you can strafe right and roll left. I'm confident that if you can dodge Gravity Spiral, Godskin's Fat Roll, Morgott Hammer and Club Spin, then you should absolutely be comfortable dodging this attack consistently. Is it a good attack? Could be better. It shouldn't have to linger for so long, and one roll should cut it, but it is absolutely fair. It definitely wasn't easy to learn, as it was the result of a lot of my deaths, but once I got the hang of it, I really started to enjoy the degree of precision required for the attack. Aside from his charge, Gaius is a decent fight. He has a fun flow to combat that utilizes a unique style of gameplay, with a decent amount of jumps and low profiles, further enhancing the depth of the boss. As long as you always directionally roll to follow Gaius and are willing to learn his moveset, then you should have a great time with him, and I don't understand why he's so hated. I would like to put him in high B tier, but there's a couple of underlying issues that hold him back. This boss has bad hitboxes. What the fuck is that? The weird thing about this hitbox is that I could previously low profile the attack, but I guess not, fuck me. This could be due to the arena elevation, but even then, it's still nowhere near the sword. Good hitboxes are essential for Elden Ring gameplay, or the added depth that makes these bosses so fun and creative with jump and low profiles don't mean anything. The boss has a bunch more oversized hitboxes, but I think you get the idea. C tier, and around the same at level 1. Next, let's cover Sunflower by Post Malone and Sway Lee. First, Am I Dreaming is better. Second, this boss sucks. I do like the character design of the boss being quite distinct, with the soundtrack in the boss arena being quite unique as well. The aesthetics for the boss are absolutely top notch. Yet sadly, the fight sucks dick. This boss is the personification of Resident Sleeper. The moveset feels like something out of early game Dark Souls 2 and is very slow with barely any room for practical player depth, so you have to play by his boring rules and stick to rolling. To clarify, I don't inherently have a problem with just a slow-paced roll boss. Ancestor Spirit does this well, but the difference is Sunflower's second and third phase. After the first phase is over in probably less than a minute, he will revive, always starting with an attack where he will go, gotta go fast, basically as you chase after the boss, while it uses possibly the worst projectile in the entire game. His Impenetrable Thorns attack he will often use can be a frame trap, aka an attack that no matter where you roll, it's unavoidable damage, since the trajectory of the attack will always loop around to hit you, even at the end of your roll animation. It's fine if he uses it at mid and long ranges, however there is no consistent roll direction that at least I've found at point blank, which wildly alters the tracking and RNG of the attack, making it literally impossible to know where to dodge the frame trap if you even can. It's so entirely unpredictable, as even at a standstill, sometimes the tracking will go around you sentiently to curve around your Raptor of the Mist, or will still track around your Blink Bolt, which is a bordering bullshit one-shot kill. Other times, other attacks you use will have questionable hitboxes once again, putting you in more no-win situations where you will get fucked. Needless to say, I keep dying to these thorn attacks and it's infuriating. There's so much finicky nonsense to the boss. Like, for this left slam, immediately after he hits me, the thorns come up instantly, so it's obvious that you need to roll straight out of it once you get hit. But, in the next attempt, I roll straight out of it and it frame traps me and I die. What does the boss want me to do? Maybe there's something missing about this boss, like the consistency of his attacks or when to roll, but in my experience, this is awful. The boss will use projectiles where there's no punish window with so much downtime that he eliminates all flow or engagement in the fight. He will also continuously use moves that make you run away and moves where he can also run away 20 miles, so you have to spend a minute running back to him only for him to come at you with the most boring attacks in the game with more frame trap garbage, and the arms can also move off camera at close ranges so you can't even see his telegraphs, and the arena can block you when you dodge his projectile spam for a no-win situation before you even realize it. An extremely boring boss with low to no complexity, attacks that border bullshit on multiple occasions, and extremely low amount of depth. D- tier. Way worse at level 1. The boss is F tier mechanically and is so fucking boring, but has some redeeming factors outside of the fight, I guess, so D-. In order to fight Midra, we need to run a marathon to get to his ass. We bust through a secret part of the Shadow Keep, through a hidden wall, down a coffin, proceeding into a small forest. This leads into a small dungeon. Get off me, bastards. Exactly. 8 thralls, bro. As in Dark Souls 3. Literally die right here. Woo! To end up at Jory. Yeah. He's a mid as fuck mage boss that uses basic spells and also teleports to run away from you. Nothing new we haven't seen before. Now you see, it'd be awesome if I knew you could backstab loop him to kill him easily, but I never found that out. Now, why would I need this tool to backstab loop him? You could just fight him normally, right? Well, it's because he has summons. Woo! Please stop this. This is an awful, unfun, horrendous, unnecessary form of difficulty. I was a couple hours deep into the boss, mindlessly trying to deal with him, getting my ass slapped, before I asked for some advice. Thanks to my boy Devil Hunter once again, he told me how Jori works. Similarly to Rolana, he has a summons crap where you need to draw out hits from his summons. But this is absolutely awful, as the boss can stack points of unavoidable damage off screen for a bullshit death for an otherwise mechanically basic boss. D- tier. Mechanically this boss is F, but knowing that you can backstab loop him to where he can't do anything makes him a little bit more redeemable than the bottom of the barrel. Way worse at level 1. Holy shit, bro, get off me. Get off me, bitch. Get off me, bitch. He's so close, bro. My madness, bro. Holy shit, holy shit, holy shit. Get off me, get off me, get off me. How long is the move? Holy shit, bro. Holy shit. Holy shit, dude. Bro. Pushing up into Midra's Manse greets us with some incredible visual storytelling. The array of decapitated heads gave me the heebie-jeebies first playthrough for sure. Making our way through it allows us to fight Midra. The fight typically starts with Midra swinging his greatsword in quick succession with extremely intuitive roll timings. Most of his combos flow in a smooth and graceful manner, with some frenzied flame fire trails to spice it up. When fighting this boss, you will notice that many of his moves and combos are very simple. Not much of what Midra has at close range is very complex or difficult, resulting in a mostly simple and hard to love boss. But, to somewhat counteract this for me, there's depth. A shit ton of player depth. There are so many jumping openings in this fight. So many low profiles added as well. Experimenting with what worked and what didn't was a lot of fun for me, as it redeems the boss's easy moveset. The simplicity of his kit made it pretty easy and enjoyable for me to find jumps and crouches, and in one move I call the helicopter, it serves as an almost complete crouch heal window, or an attack window similar to Mesmer's Firefowl dance. And that's really about it. I really advise not playing for posture break against this boss, because he folds so quickly, it's embarrassing. A pretty simple B tier boss with everything else being great besides mechanics, so low A tier. Better at level 1. Venturing outside of the woods, we get to do Ymir Fritz's questline to go fight Metyr, Mother of Fingers. This was the final chance that FromSoft had in their attempts at a cosmic space-themed boss, and they almost had everything right. Aside from the giant questline of hype for the Mother of Fingers, the only thing this fight deserves is my fucking middle one because it sucks. Metyr will use a series of hand slams and head slams, with clear telegraphs, with some small laser attacks. She's a pretty similar vibe to Estelle, where it's mostly simple, that's elevated by a cool space aesthetic and boss arena. I'd be willing to give this boss C tier mechanically, but B tier for its cool death animation and its soundtrack literally taking sounds from a black hole sampled onto the soundtrack. But that's about where the positives end for me. First, why are there summons in the fight? No fight is better with summons. The fight goes down to C for having summons at all. Oh yeah, and let's talk about probably the worst move in FromSoft history, Gamma Ray Burst. You can react to it, but you can't avoid it in one input like a Margit swing. You can avoid it with base mechanics, but you have to be far enough away to where I don't consider it reasonable or consistent. Only one Ash of War in the entire game is a consistent solution to this attack, that being Raptors of the Mist. This is obviously horrible design with almost zero solutions. Oh yeah, and without Raptors of the Mist, you have to be at long range beforehand to avoid the attack. But when you're at long range, she can whip out the summons, resulting in your death. But the boss also has gap closers if you're at long range, so if she uses them, the laser is actually unavoidable damage, but if you always stay close range with Raptor of the Mist, then she can run away and use the summons. What the fuck? D- tier. I try to enjoy its cool moves, the soundtrack, and the boss arena, but then eventually I'm faced with the summons and the worst attack in the entire game, and it just tosses everything good out the window. Anything in between the laser and the summons is a very simple C tier moveset out of early game Dark Souls 3 with barely any complexity or depth, exponentially worse at level 1. If this boss was based around anything but a 6 space aesthetic, then I'd probably give it a lower tier. Ramana is one of the most aesthetically powerful bosses in the entire game. I love the floating pink butterflies that emerge out of her wings, with swirling raw energy that makes the fight pretty enjoyable despite the simplicity. Many of her centipede swings can be jumped to entirely eliminate those moves as a threat, to create an enjoyable mix of jumping and rolling, along with some low profiles on her sword swings. It's a simple fight with not much positioning requirements, mix-ups, yada yada yada, yet her visuals make her pop despite that. Okay, now for the bad, and yes, it'll sting, no pun intended. Sometimes when fighting her, she would just swing and spin all over the place to fuck up my camera to where I literally can't tell what the hell is even going on. My second issue, and the one that's most annoying, is her absurd phase transition in AoE. I'll call them the Rot Storm. Ramana can summon Rot Storms that you have to roll from literally instantly on light roll or else you're gonna die. On her phase transition, she's a bit generous as it only works on light roll and if you can recognize it instantly. Even so, with this being the generous attack, if you're stuck in an animation like a light attack, then you're done. If you're on mid roll and close range, you're done. Her AoE though is much worse. This starts basically instantly and can straight up initiate a sequence that leads to death. The AoEs in phase 2 are basically bullshit on milliseconds, but 120 melee of 3. It is not reactable, and it is not predictable, and it seems that she could whip this out of neutral and is an AoE. While these Rot Storms look really cool, they make for some extremely poor gameplay on level 1. C tier. A boss that's mechanically simple with some annoying moves and misplaced hitboxes. Seriously, on her swings, why does her entire body become a hitbox when she's swinging her sword, but is saved partially due to her aesthetic?
I knew you'd come.
Oh fuck no. Leda And Friends is Gang Squad 2.0. Nobody likes NPC fights, and nobody likes NPC gang fights. The lore for the fight is incredible if you actually did all the character quest lines. Too bad I'm a gameplay guy and fun first, so all this just goes out in the trash and I hold mid and spam bloody slash. Getting close is awful since, dude, it's an Elden Ring gang fight, aka stick your dick in a blender simulator. Not very hard, not very easy, just really dull and boring. C tier, around the same at level 1. One thing I want to add is how I genuinely cannot understand how someone would think this DLC is brutally difficult to an unfair or artificial difficulty degree. Are there points of cheap attacks? Yes. Do camera issues exist? Yes. However, these are much less prevalent than most people make it out to be. There is a scaling system in the DLC that allows you to nerf every boss through raw damage, juiced to the gills with defenses that didn't exist in the base game that are mostly easy to collect without fighting any bosses. The new weapons and defensive talismans that were added make bosses like Mesmer an absolute joke if you used all the options available. If you know anything about damage reduction, then even at level 1, you could take multiple hits and still won't die. If you know anything about damage increase and buffs, you can absolutely break these DLC bosses and script them entirely, even at level 1. Here's Jake Newton beating Gaius on level 1, only using 2 buffs in literally under a minute. Here's Dowell beating Promised Consort Radahn on level 1 in under 2 minutes. Can you imagine what an actually leveled character could do? In the clip shown here, I literally wiped Mesmer in 1 minute using no buffs, just talismans. Let's say you're not the type of guy to buff like crazy, like me. Then let's talk about mechanics. 7 out of 12 main bosses are not very complex, with around the same mechanical complexity as Radahn. If you know how to fight Starscourge Radahn, none of the DLC bosses should be that much of an issue, excluding the top 4. If you are willing to sit down, use your alternatives, or learn the boss in front of you and tune the game to your preferred difficulty, then you shouldn't have too much of a brutally difficult time. I'm not saying you shouldn't find these bosses difficult or you shouldn't struggle with them, but finding them difficult to the levels of bullshit or unfair I think is very crazy when the base game has a much larger variety of more complex and difficult bosses with less options for the player. In every way, from a boss complexity standpoint and from a player option standpoint, the DLC is much easier than the base game in my opinion. Riding up to the penultimate boss of the DLC, Baal has build-up that makes it actually feel worth it this time. Traveling through the mountains with storming lightning, dead dragons left and right with constant spirit springs, which is something I think the base game didn't use enough, is fully brought out here, as your ascent to the peak of the mountain becomes more dramatic and chaotic as you go up with him to fight one of the most enjoyable bosses in the game. Baal forces the player to directionally roll certain directions or else his head won't be punishable as an opening. You constantly need to find out what the specific direction to roll is to always get a consistent opening off, which I found quite fun. After so much mid, this is exactly what I want. The boss is extremely strict with its openings too, as if you don't locate the head as an opening very quickly, you've lost it, and it creates a very tight flow to combat. The level of badass this boss exudes in Phase 2 quite literally shits on every other boss in the game. The boss screams phantom wings into existence and takes off to the skies to deliver you kamikaze, lightning on every slam that enforces directional rolling right, nuclear fucking bombs that you need to jump over, lasers where he catches lightning in its mouth, screams that call thunder down from the heavens. This boss just does not stop with the straight war he delivers. Everything great about Phase 1 is amplified in Phase 2, in a mechanically interesting, flashy boss that forces unique positions and roll directions to beat him. His resistances are actually so jacked that not even my Starfist dealt solid damage at this point, even with buffs. At this point, similarly to Placidusax, I found it most effective to play for poise breaks, since you get such a generous window when you stagger him. One tip for Baal's roar is to generally in neutral just stare at his body, not just his head. It's very hard to tell the telegraph for it if you only stare at his head. Baal's entire body moving up for a bit, then his head moving down is very recognizable if you're familiar with how his body's supposed to look in neutral. I wouldn't recommend punishing the boss for this attack however, since he can stack combos on top of the lightning, which is admittedly a little cheap. Baal has a fire attack similarly to the fire giant one I described earlier, to where the fire can stray a little bit to the left or right, causing you to die without rhyme or reason. This damage is not consistently avoidable, since you literally don't know when the fire is going to randomly stray. Sometimes it will, and sometimes it won't. Guess right, motherfucker. There seems to be some aspect of physics, terrain, or luck, because even in the exact same position, using the exact same attack, it is so wildly inconsistent that hardcore gambling addicts have a better chance of getting rich than you avoiding this attack consistently. Another thing, when the fight starts, why does Baal immediately jump on top of me? This is a fight where you're supposed to stay in front of the boss, but there are literal times where I would just enter the fight and the arena will just fuck you over at the start, essentially launching you into death. Dude, if the main point of fairness and fun in this fight is to make this player in control of the camera to stay in front of the boss, why does he have a move that forces you under him? It doesn't make any sense. His camera during his fight can also just completely crap itself as it molds into the floor. And as cool as his phase transition is, it can de-lock your camera, guaranteeing your death as you don't know where Baal is while trying to avoid the tracking fireballs. Overall, I'm gonna give Baal a low S tier. The aforementioned problems aren't bad enough to ruin the fight, but it's enough to significantly drag it down and keep it out of my favorites of all time. I still really like the boss fight and it's sick fucking shit, but jeez, this really isn't excusable. Especially when most of my deaths are a result of this stuff, rather than being specific dodge timings. Around the same at level 1. Now, with one boss to finish out the DLC, this is impossible. No boss, no challenge, no game, no piece of art, and almost nothing in life has beat me down so much. There is something I've been hiding from you, and I'm sure you know what it is by now. I have an input delay, but not the one you're thinking about. Not a slight amount of input delay, no. I'm talking about 320 milliseconds. Yes, 320 milliseconds. I've complained about it many times throughout this video. I have an average of 250 milliseconds. That's my reaction time. I have an input delay of 320 milliseconds. This means that it takes on average 570 milliseconds to roll an attack. If an attack is faster than 550 milliseconds, the move is probably unavoidable damage for me. This quite bluntly makes the game so much harder than it needs to be and forces me into situations where I literally cannot get close to the boss. So many attacks and bosses in this video are ruined because it is literally impossible for me to avoid an attack faster than 550 milliseconds on average. I had to hold mid-range and spam Ashes of War boss after boss because at close range, any move that comes out that has close to that timing is an instant kill on level 1. This has not stopped me from doing rune level 1 hitless on extremely fast bosses in the run, because these games are about perseverance and overcoming brutal but fair challenges regardless of jank or your handicaps. I thank you, Elden Ring, for teaching this to me, but it's time that I give up. Listen, Promise Consort Radahn's cross slash comes out in 450 milliseconds. This attack is nigh unavoidable damage. I'd have to react at 130 milliseconds minimum to react to it. This is imperceivable and unpredictable damage since it comes out of neutral. Neutral right swing is bullshit unavoidable damage for being another quick reaction check. Quick cross is a bullshit unavoidable attack. Do you see the problem? For reference, the fastest reaction time in human history is around 100 milliseconds, with the likes of F1 drivers and fighter pilots having this level of reaction time. I am not an F1 driver or a fighter pilot. I'm a 17-year-old Elden Ring player. Oh, and by the way, his neutral right vertical swing is a perfect roll catch, since it comes out in exactly my input delay roll and lag. His stomp is also a perfect input delay roll catch. His ring attack in phase 2 is a perfect input delay roll catch. But the animation is so similar to quick cross that they are basically indistinguishable with input delay, and that's how fast I need to react if I want to live. If I try to react instantly to whatever he does in hopes that my body's genetic reaction time will do what I hope it does, it could still perfectly roll catch me and I will die. I either guess right for his neutral swing, or I guess wrong and I get perfectly roll caught and it's over. This is impossible. I know, it's not the game's fault. It's my system's fault. But that doesn't make me feel any better. I could have left it at that and not have ranked the boss due to technical issues. But I was determined. I fought every boss up to this point with 320 millisecond input delay. I've tried different controllers and nothing works when solving the input delay. Without me being able to solve my Xbox, let's see what alternatives I have against this move. What about Ashes of War? Ashes of War have less of an input delay, but the button still has a roughly 250 millisecond input delay, making cross slash slightly more reactable, but it's not enough to solve the problem. Options like parrying, backhand blades, Raptors of the Mist, Bloodhound Step, etc. are impractical. What about holding long range or mid? Similarly to the Godskins in fear of an attack like cross slash, I'd hold mid range and spam Ashes of War. It might work, but it's too flimsy and too inconsistent of a method to beating him, as the range of the cross slash is still territory where he can hit me. In the Godskins, I could easily outdistance them, but when the boss covers so much ground with bad hitboxes on his swords that hits way farther than it should have on top of his light beams, even worse, I'm not sure if I would even have enough FP to handle spamming Bloody Slash or another Ash of War to kill him, due to his sky-high resistances. Other long-range projectile Ashes of War, incantations, and spells do significantly less damage for their FP cost. It could be possible that I'm missing out on a combination here, but regardless, staying close range to him is not an option. What about status affecting him to death? What if I were to poison him and rot him, then run away? I did consider this, but rot wears off, forcing me to re-engage with the boss, with high levels of resistance in which if I guess wrong once on his stomp or his cross slash, or his quick slash, or his neutral right swing, I'm dead. This strategy of rotting him and poisoning him didn't work even after hours of trying. There is no shield at level 1 to my knowledge that I can properly use to block all of his attacks. I have to block every attack in neutral because that is the biggest issue. And in phase 2, when I block some of his neutral swings, the light beams stack on top of them, resulting in my guard being broken in one hit, leading me to die. What about the deflect tier? I never got the tier because even if I did, the input delay would have been insane enough to where I couldn't reasonably react to it, as blocking has a 320 millisecond input delay, making it as ineffective as a roll. Changing buttons on my controller to reverse the options for roll or Ash of War doesn't matter either. My D-pad has a 220 millisecond input delay. Pressing my analog sticks has a 270 millisecond input delay. My menu button has a 250 millisecond input delay. What about playing for posture break? That would make this fight a lot more simple. Well, guess what? Promise Consort Radahn's poise goes down so quickly, with the bar so large that even with the maxed out poise breaking build, with charged R2 low profile spam, it is still incredibly hard to poise break him at all. Not to mention all the flying crap he does in phase 2, resetting his poise entirely. There is no solution. Reality is what I must face. In the end, I settled on Bloodhound Step and fighting him with close ranged combat, because it is less input delay than a roll, and is more effective. But none of those matter because the boss is still ass. Let's pretend input delay doesn't exist. Bosses like Godfrey get double S tier despite having bullshit unavoidable damage. First, every single swing this boss does is oversized by a lot. I've ragged on some bosses for having bad hitboxes here and there, but this boss has one on almost every single attack, and will kill you when it shouldn't have. I will say this again. Elden Ring necessitates razor-thin hitboxes for player depth, difficulty, and great game design. Oversizing the boss's hitbox to where you can't low profile or jump 99% of his attacks in phase 2 just feels like a completely wrong understanding of what makes Elden Ring combat so fun. Deliberate, meticulous combat was always what made Elden Ring and the other Souls games combat fun for me. Adding an extra dimension of movement for players increases the possibilities for complexity, exponented by player depth, to make the bosses in this game far better than anything in previous games at its best. Promise Consort Radahn has the complexity of a mid-game DS3 boss with barely any mix-ups and very basic combos. Even worse, due to the bad hitboxes, there's no player depth. There are barely any jumpable, strafable, low profilable, outpositionable attacks in this fight. When it comes to jumps, the only real practical one is his stomp, which is not reasonably identifiable on input delay. He also has a couple of low profiles that only work with Starfist R2s, Greatsword R1s, and low casting miracles like heal. Except for the fact that these low profiles don't even matter due to his wildly bumpy arena that fucks up all consistency for his low profiles, so you're better off not even trying on level 1. Next, phase 2. His light beams are supposed to be the main mechanic of this fight, but they fucking suck. They're supposed to act as a positioning lock, so you can't run away similarly to Mohg's Bloodflame, except in the learning process, the visual clutter for them is insane, while also once mastered, being wildly inconsistent in their patterns due to the arena. Seriously, these things will sometimes head one way, then another that is entirely unpredictable, unavoidable damage. You could have a roll that solves an attack 9 times in a row, then on the same attack, you roll that for the 10th time, and it just doesn't work because of the arena messing up the elevation and the positions of the light beams in the process, which is a one-shot kill on level 1. This is genuine bullshit. Mohg's Bloodflame was so good because the Bloodflame lingered, so you had to play his game and stay close with your punishes, and your directional rolls wildly varying depending on the location of the Bloodflame. Mohg uses the shower attack and throws some blood flame while moving away. Shit, now I can't roll into that attack because the shower is blocking my positioning. Now I should go top left to close the gap to avoid his blood flame. Mohg's blood flame is made to fly in inconsistent positions, while lingering to have you create new positions, roll directions, and punishes on the fly, while also being close enough to where you had to be in close proximity, but far enough to where you always have some room to directionally roll in another spot, to guarantee your safety, which is extremely fun and well designed. Promise Consort Radahn's light beams almost necessitate you rolling left for the majority of his swings to avoid his jank light beams. How do you think challenge runners do this boss no hit for an hour? How do you have a fight with such inconsistent light beams for an hour without getting hit once? By rolling left for every single input, which is necessitated at level 1, but forcing the same boring ass reaction for nearly every single attack arguably doesn't make him complex at all. The arena doesn't just mess up his light beams, but some of his other attacks as well. His Promise Consort combo is supposed to cover a ridiculous amount of distance and almost teleport to the player consistently. I'm okay with this, but sometimes the move would just do fucking nothing, as I'm forced to preemptively roll due to the teleport and I roll right into the light beams, causing a glitched out bullshit one-shot jank ass death. His clone attacks are also glitched out one-shot bullshit cancer. Ignoring the visual clutter during the learning process, they're supposed to have predictable patterns to make them avoidable, but sometimes for absolutely zero reason that I can discern, they will randomly stray to your direction with zero consistency or predictability, resulting in me dying to more bullshit. Oh yeah, and sometimes his clones will just disappear mid-fight. His rock pull-up attack in phase 1 also has bad hitboxes. I am literally outside of the visual for the hitbox. What the hell is hitting me? It's so draining and frustrating when almost every attack from this boss is an imperceivable nightmare, and everything that isn't is a glitched out buggy mess with a bad arena, bad hitboxes, and visual clutter from Miquella's hair to obscure his telegraphs. He also has zero positioning based extenders to make the fight more fun. The boss's complexity is at the floor, and his depth is in the grave, and is inconsistent due to the arena, so rolling left for every attack or running away is my two options. It's boring. I feel like a robot, programmed for eternity, for the same two static reactions, drunk on the impossible idea of beating this boss. But I persisted. I said with my full spirit that there is no challenge I couldn't conquer. The hours sank in. The hours turning into sessions. Sessions turning into days. Days going into weeks into a month. A month of nothing but straight chance-based guessing. Boss attempts, completely based on chance. I was hoping I could beat it my way, the way I found fun, using any alternative available. 1 month of pure chance. 1 month of just fighting the boss, every day dedicating every ounce of my leisure time, waking up to sleep with my focus dedicated at this nightmare for as many hours a day as possible. Input delay. Input delay. The cause of my death. Death after death after death after death after death. The perpetual cycle of death I would go through. A month of me trying my absolute best to be tore down to something that was an improbability, if not an impossibility. When I fought the boss, it took me 4 hours to reach phase 2 once. 40 hours later, 44 hours deep, I realized I made it no further than I was 40 hours ago, just barely scraping by phase 2. 1 month of effort to realize that I had not made any progress since the first day. Maybe this boss wasn't possible. And eventually, my spirit broke. I couldn't do it anymore. struggling against the system against me. This is not the game's fault, but my experience. I'm not gonna lie and say that the boss is good when it's not. I'm not gonna act like input delay wasn't a factor when it was. I'm not gonna fake my experience and say the boss would have or could have been better. Every boss up to this point has been judged with these standards, and Horaloo is still my third favorite boss of all time with bullshit unavoidable damage. Maybe on a different level you could tank the damage. Maybe on a different setup you could react to the boss fine without input delay. Maybe with a different experience you could have none of the camera issues, dice roll storm RNG deaths that you can't do anything about, arena issues, glitches, bad hitboxes, ground cheeses, iframing knowing attacks. Maybe you could enjoy the boss. But from what I can tell, this boss is a far cry. No, the farthest cry from what should have been the mechanical masterpiece that the final DLC boss of From's most deep and complex game, Promised Consort Radahn, could have and should have been. Infinitely worse at level 1. Melina is a boss with so many branching combos that once again she forces me as the player to almost completely react to her attacks, similarly to Horaloo or Rylana. Complete reaction and no prediction, the pinnacle of complexity in Elden Ring. Her double swing alone can branch off to 11 different mix-ups that I've discovered, beating out Horaloo. She has 2 forms of backing off she can do, both of which are openings. She can do a fast hook, which is a jumping opening, a delayed hook, which is a jumping and a normal opening. She can grab, which is a normal as well as a jumping back R2 opening, a ground and pound, which you can roll into with a rolling R1 to low profile the first swipe, a right kick, which is an interruptible opening and a jumping opening, a side blade, which is a normal and jumping opening, a side step, which is an interruptible opening or a jumping opening, a quick snap combo, which is an interruptible opening, a jumping opening, and a delayed snap combo, which is an interruptible, normal, and jumpable opening. Do you fucking get it? She is the most complex boss in the game, and probably in FromSoft history. Melina has infinite depth similarly to Rylana, and you can jump so much in this fight. So many of her attacks you can low profile. So many attacks you can outstrafe. The best thing about Melina is her ability to be staggered. With most bosses, you hit them during their combo, you follow the boss's flow to combat as they set the pace for the fight. This way, you need to find creative defensive play to have the most fun to beat these bosses. Instead, with Melina, you completely dictate the flow of combat. The boss seems like her combos are so excessively long because you're supposed to stagger her. You're not only supposed to fight her with good defensive gameplay to avoid her moves, but you also need good offensive gameplay for optimal punishes. You need to learn when you can hit her, when to interrupt her, and what can't be interrupted. At many times, she may seem like she's unleashing one string of attacks, but really, there are so many openings in between her attacks, it's mind-blowing, bro. Like, you gotta try this shit. You can test how knowledgeable you are on the boss's openings like this. In this clip, count the openings in your head. How many openings have you spotted in this one clip? Come on, your attention span can't be that low. Okay, here's some Subway Surfers. Family Guy clips, perhaps? Is it A, 1 to 4 openings in the clip, B, 5 to 8 openings, or C, 9 to 13? Well, if you chose A, wrong. If you chose B, wrong again. If you chose C, wrong again. Because I counted 14. Melania's dashing blade attacks, you can always interrupt afterward. Anytime Melania runs away, you can punish her as long as she doesn't start another attack. All sidesteps are interruptible as soon as she gets out. Any right hook after her sidestep is an opening. This move I call the snap combo. Anytime she does it, you can interrupt her before the final swing. Any side blade is always an interruptible opening. Melania will immediately react to your swings with the reaction that you need to react to, in which the boss will react back and come with a reactable attack, and your reactions will cycle in what results in the most intense, engaging, depth and complexity heavy boss in the entire series. You can play slowly and take your time with Melania, as she'll be a very slow and defensive fight. You can outpace her and interrupt her occasionally, making her a decently fast-paced fight. Or you can fight her like me, 100% pure aggression, no holds barred. No boss can have a complex combo with many branching points and high depth. Then when you hit her, she instantly changes up her entire combo, and now you have to instantly adapt to her new combo with multiple branch points and high depth, and anything she could potentially follow up with, which should be obvious by now. I love about her fight. Let's talk about the part everybody hates, Waterfowl Dance. At first, this move was an instant kill and brought me so much misery. This fucking pose, the symbol of my dreams, crumbling down to my nightmares. This is the symbol that's downloaded into my brain, more well imprinted than my last name. My brain recognizes this signal better than my face, better than the sun. The pose plays like a broken record in my eyes over and over again. In fact, I could cut a fucking shape out of this paper with my hands off memory alone. That's how much this move has terrified me. Fortunately though, this move is quite fun for me to dodge now. The final evolution of the sprint jump takes place here, as you can sprint jump Waterfowl Dance from any distance, even with a delayed reaction. Even if you are using a colossal weapon with a fully charged R2 as she responds to your attack instantly, you'll still have time to get out and sprint jump out of the way. And to do that flawlessly as well, might I add. It's more so about timing than it is distance, as if you time the jump like a roll, then you'll iframe the attack. The other two flurries you can just roll normally, or you can sprint jump both of them. By the way, here's a video I made with 30 other methods to dodge it straight up. I recommend experimenting with these if you're struggling with this attack. However, let's talk about what sucks about her fight. First, her hyper armor is sometimes a bit weird. The entire point of her fight is that she staggers properly, but sometimes you can dome her in the head with a colossal weapon and nothing happens, because fuck you, leading to your death. This is because sometimes her hyper armor frames can get pretty similar to her neutral frames, which can make the fight a bit more frustrating and weird. Regardless, her hyper armor is 100% consistent to my knowledge. It's just that the readability of when she's in hyper armor and when she's in not can be a little weird sometimes. The frequency for this is pretty rare and it is entirely learnable, so it's not too much of a problem. When in Phase 2, it may just seem like Phase 1 with some new coats of paint and some new extensions, but the moves she adds are extremely engaging. My favorite of which being the Rot Slam, where she flies up and slams down with a Rot Explosion. This move can come after all of her previous combo enders, so now punishing what you thought was safe in Phase 1 sometimes is an opening and sometimes isn't. Never knowing whether it's a real opening or not is something I find exhilarating. This move is also technically fair, because when she cancels her combo ender recovery for this attack, this is the largest punish window she has. This move can be confused with Waterfowl Dance in the learning process, so as a tip, whenever you see her fly up, immediately sprint and jump back for an all-win scenario. This way, you either run away from the Rot Explosion and live, or sprint jump Waterfowl and live. By the time you recognize what is what, You can continue to sprint and jump back, or you can just turn and then punish her when you go back in. The biggest change in Phase 2 is the way she reacts to being staggered. When you hit her, instead of running away or parrying your hit, she would turn up the flow to 11 by just swinging back the instant you swing at her. Due to her sky-high complexity, she could be in the middle of a 20-hit complex unpredictable combo. Then when you hit her, she immediately cancels that for a completely different 30-hit complex unpredictable combo with tons of depth in it too. Then when you hit her immediately again, she launches into a 3-hit combo, dynamically changing up the entire fight. Every time you interrupt her during any attack, you are literally anticipating 12 to 14 reactions out of stagger. Each one of these attacks with their own optimized directional rolls, low profiles, jumps, strafes, runs, etc. You can cycle this again and again and again, and when you get into that zone with Melina, when you're both firing on all cylinders, using every tool at your disposal to beat her, when you're maximizing your offensive and defensive gameplay, and the boss is maximizing her offensive and defensive gameplay, she becomes the greatest boss fight ever. Oh yeah, I'm fucking Mesmer supposed to compete with that? Placidusax doesn't even tickle her toes, little bro. Everything in this entire game is considerably gapped by Melina. The best boss I have ever fought. Though these motherfuckers are coming up, so they might be a bit better, but infinitely better at level 1. Radagon and Elden Beast are one amazing capstone to end off the game. Oh wait, I forgot Fortissax. Valiant Gargos get D tier, shitty gank fight, decent movesets, nobody likes them as a gank, nobody likes Fia's cucks either. Basically, I zone them running in psychotic circles in this micro-penis-sized arena, and spam Bloody Slash, both were at level 1. But the part that everybody cares about, Fortissax. I know, gets a lot of flack for being another generic dragon, but I disagree, as I think this boss is a masterpiece in positioning. Fortissax will summon clouds of Deathblight. At first, I thought this was bullshit, because it obscured all his animations, forcing me to run away as I can't see a thing while he's stacking literal death AoEs. But running under him is actually the solution, adding a layer of positioning in which you should lock off. If you go under him, the Deathblight won't hit you, and you can see all his telegraphs. You can easily observe his hands and legs, easily avoiding his swings, which makes it a toenail clipping simulator like every other dragon. Or so I thought. Once under him, he'll apply a lightning aura on the player that you need to run or roll from, so you can't just stay in that one position. Usually the lightning takes a while to trigger on you, so even when it's on you, I'd say just get one hit on his hands or legs, then just run to shake it off. I spammed running attacks in this state because it's easier for me to shake off the lightning that way. To enforce this strategy once you're under him, he will have moves that shoot lightning in your direction that you can jump while the aura is on you, so the fight stays engaging and fun. I usually then get a hit or two off. When it gets too overwhelming for me, I run to his tail to shake off the lightning and hit him there. Usually he will fly up to reset positioning or use a tail move to reset positioning, in which the entire fight goes back to 0. Then I relock on my camera onto his head and start headhunting him. Then eventually he'll do the Deathblight clouds, in which you need to repeat the cycle, constantly moving in and out, locking on and off as the boss constantly adapts to my position is something I find very fun, unique, and engaging. You should always be constantly maneuvering your camera to manage running directions, plus the boss telegraphs as when you're under him, stare at his arms, because then you can see what's coming while avoiding the body lightning. He has a couple of jumpable attacks such as his lightning spears and his flying claw attack for openings. I also like how his lightning claw effects are similar to Bale Phase 2, where they have lightning extensions on them that necessitate directional rolls. Bale's lightning forces you to roll right for a punish, his lightning slam forces you to roll left to punish his head. His lightning glaive spin is also a very easy crouch, and when he does this shit with the pink skybox, it's fucking nutty, dude. Mechanically, it's S tier, but I just don't find it as fun as the other Titans in S. So A. Better at level 1. Before we talk about the final boss, I want to have a section addressing the community. Cue the cinema.
Step right up, ladies and gentlemen. Feast your eyes on the grandest, most earth-shaking release in gaming history, Elden Ring. That's right, folks. FromSoftware's biggest, boldest adventure had arrived, and for a brief, shining moment, all was right with the world. Players rejoiced, critics cheered, and the lands between were ripe for exploration. But wait, what's this? Trouble on the horizon, or you better believe it. As the dust settled and the bravest of warriors clashed steel with the game's fiercest foes, murmurings of doubt and frustration began to spread like a wildfire. Some of these bosses, they said, were tougher than a $2 steak and, dare we say, unfair. But the debate remained murky and unclear. Until, that is, a month and a half later, when YouTube's very own Joseph Anderson stormed onto the scene, microphone in hand, ready to lay down the cold, hard truth. His video, why a staggering 3 million views, was hailed far and wide. Then, as if summoned by the fates, VG Matthew followed suit, echoing the same grievances and racking up a cool 1 million views of his own. The message was clear. FromSoft had gone too far. As the voices grew louder, the court of public opinion shifted. Players, critics, even casual adventurers, many saw these analyses as gospel truth, forever altering the landscape of Elden Ring discourse. Why, even those once determined to conquer the game found themselves doubting its fairness. You see, folks, when the chips are down and frustration sets in, people will cling to any explanation that sounds reasonable. And thus, a new wave of players emerged, the skill issues. Gamers who struggled, who refused to adapt, who lashed out at the game and anyone who dared to defend it. And just like that, the battle lines were drawn. But hold the phone, folks, because this story has a twist. Enter Lupine OS, a lone warrior, armed with logic and reason, and an ironclad rebuttal. With the video so powerful, so unshakable in its arguments, he struck back against the critics, dismantling their claims piece by piece, and offering a new perspective on Elden Ring boss design. He explained how these bosses were fair, had positioning-based extenders, had many different types of openings, unlike the previous games. Why, he even changed public perception, restoring faith in FromSoftware's craft. But alas, with every battle, a counterforce emerges. Thus, the cultists were born and emerged out of the shadows. Players newly awakened to the game's depth, but blinded by their own arrogance. With victory in their grasp, they refused to acknowledge any faults at all. And so, the great cycle of discourse raged on. And then, Shadow of the Erdtree, a brand new expansion, a fresh battlefield, and history, my friends, repeating itself. The skill issues returned, rallying against FromSoftware's most punishing bosses yet. But this time, oh this time the cultists fought back. The fanbase was divided, neither side willing to yield. And thus, dear listeners, we arrive at the present. A world where both perspectives clash endlessly, locked in an eternal struggle. Will the dust ever settle? Will peace return to the lands between? Only time will tell, folks. Only time will tell.
After my Feeble King review, I realized I was being a cultist. A person aggressively, if not in a toxic way, called out others over small talk on a video game. With more and more exposure to the community, I realized how apparent these two sides were. This must only be an issue with Shadow of the Erdtree, I thought. With the influence of big reviews playing such a big role, I looked back into the past. People hated on some Dark Souls 3 bosses at release, so how did the community come back from that? What? People had the same complaints about Frida as people do about Elden Ring bosses. No openings, infinite combos, and too much damage? This is ridiculous. People have said the same things about Frida, who is much more simple and easy than Elden Ring bosses. What about Bloodborne, the most loved FromSoft game? No, it keeps going back. Bullshit attacks and artificial difficulty, just like Elden Ring. What about Dark Souls 1? Even a decade ago, people were saying bosses had no openings and would never stop attacking with bullshit. The Souls cycle has always been cyclical. People have forever and will forever misjudge and say wrong, hateful things online over completely false information. Souls elitists have always fired back on casuals, saying get good in an ignorant and annoying way. I hate to see the Souls series I love so much be mischaracterized by the community, and the community mischaracterized by itself. I don't believe I have the power to stop the cycle when Night Rain comes out. Human conflict is eternal. But at the very least, I could do my best to hopefully open your mind and at least try to understand what we're talking about. There is nothing wrong with complaining about something you don't understand. We all do that. But it's the way you go about it that grinds my gears. I could just be making a misjudgment within this community, I'm not sure. But for what I'm seeing this community for right now, based on the discourse on the release of the DLC and what's going on today, this community is divided. Skill issues need to let go of their unwilling nature to be honest and open for improvement, not disingenuous, bad faith, and restrictive to old, outdated game design beliefs since Dark Souls 1. Quote-unquote cultists need to offer respectful solutions, not trash on others for knowing less or having a different opinion and refusing to accept clear flaws. Radagon and Elden Beast are one amazing capstone to send off an incredible game. I really like how when you enter the lands between, you enter a golden fog, and to fight the final boss, you must also traverse the golden fog once again. Radagon's cutscene where he strikes the self-made man pose was magical for me first playthrough. It gave me the chills, bro. The music exploding, exuding world conquest, with that badass frame as the Elden Ring fucking lights up in his chest, is my favorite cutscene ever. Radagon's fight doesn't let up either, as he has many fast and slow hammer swings that are fun to avoid with lots of mix-ups. He has all the jumps, low profiles, strafes, all the good jazz, with his parry in particular being a mix-up itself based on the level of spell you hit him with. A pebble will be a shotgun, a close range attack being a grab that you can jump, and a big spell is a spear which you can also jump. One of the most badass moves in the game. His teleport elevates his fight to even greater heights, as now similar to Melina, he can be in the middle of a 10-hit combo, then immediately teleport as an extension of the attack, then continue another 10-hit combo, instantly with tons of jumps and low profile openings in between, elevating the fight's complexity to the absolute greats of the game. His teleport is very consistent to avoid and fun if you just roll back when you see the second burst, and you'll never get teleported on top of. Always roll back when you see the second burst. His gap closer, by the way, you can always do a crouching R2 on, which I find fun. His shotgun sprays are really cool, but due to my input delay, they were becoming straight up bullshit one-shots, and dude, I'm just so tired of input delay, especially when I'm so close to the end and I have to die to more stupid crap outside of my control. I just switched over to a Starfist one-cycle build because I don't care anymore. I'm so done with input delay. Regardless, I still played Radagon a fair bit before switching weapons, and it was absolutely phenomenal. Best phase 1 of the entire game and an easy high S. Elden Beast, I think, has many factors about the fight that are severely overlooked. The presentation, boss arena, and music are all some of the best in the entire game. For some, including me on my first playthrough, I found it pretty anticlimactic and disappointing that the final boss was so easy compared to the banger that was Radagon. But you know, going into this challenge, all I wanted was a complex, mix-up and positioning heavy boss that tested my skill and trained me as a player. Then I got that again, and again, and again, and again, and I fought that so many times with so many of these bosses, having thrown me across the pavement, stretching my brain for jump openings and strafe openings, and then having the bosses drag me back by punishing input delay, and I'm just tired now. I feel relieved and grateful that the final boss is just a beautiful spectacle for me to feast on with the best soundtrack in the series as my ticket out of the door of this 300-hour run. Many people complain about the boss running away too much and being completely unengaging, and this is rarely true in my experience. Even then, the boss swimming away usually only results in more engagement if you have more patience than 5 seconds. What? He's swimming away? That's an opening for the onion ring attack. He's swimming away after his flying gold slash? That's another opening. He swims away, but he's coming back to swing at you? That's a jumping heavy opening. He's swimming away while casting his space ball? That's another opening if you just run at him. Hey, the boss is running away for real this time. Good thing the boss keeps it engaging the entire time. Avoiding attacks is part of the fun. I think that I don't like when a boss runs away like Shadowtree Avatar or Fire Giant because it throws frame trap garbage at me or doesn't have anything from a distance to keep my engagement, or the boss doesn't have anything else for me to look forward to. Elden Beast visually is the best boss they have ever made, with the best soundtrack in the series, so the downtime in the fight feels more like I'm enjoying a soothing experience, rather than catching up to a boss I won't enjoy any more up close. Generally for this fight, it's pretty simple. Sit back and enjoy the end of the ride. Basically every sword swing he does you can jump over, and has some attacks you can use for a positioning based opening. Elden Stars, however, is the worst attack From has ever designed. Remove this attack and this boss would legit go up a tier. The attack has so much going on, and there's only one real way to consistently avoid it. It lasts so long with zero alternatives due to its funky tracking and its length that it's borderline unavoidable damage. The only way I know of to avoid this attack is to wait until the sound cue starts and run behind the beast until the move goes away. I prefer to do this on foot, as the move will speed up if you're on torrent, which is stupid as fuck, not gonna lie. So it's best to stay on foot as you have better defensive options, so when he stacks attacks, it's less unfair and you can hope to evade it. Sometimes you'll have to bite the bullet of unavoidable damage, however, as this boss legit just plays Blueprint Armored Core 6 sometimes. Dying in 4 hits to the tiny little orbs is brutal, with zero way to get around it. Apart from this one attack, however, I really enjoy this boss. I've never liked him before this point, but you know, right now I couldn't have asked for anything better. Elden Beast is a mid-B that would have been mid-A without Elden Stars. Overall, high S with high B gets us a solid to low mid S tier ranking. Better at level 1. As in traditional Feeble King level 1 fashion, I will discuss what Elden Ring means to me as a game. Elden Ring is my favorite game ever made. It has the world interconnectivity, tangible world design, and level consistency of the first half of Dark Souls 1, the experimentation and the best ideas from Dark Souls 2, the strong formula from Dark Souls 3 and the evolution of it, music on par with some of Bloodborne's best, and the dynamic, unmatched flow and depth to combat that Sekiro has. This is the ultimate Souls game in my opinion, with the most consistently great main boss roster, the most options and forms of combat and expression ever that blow almost any other FromSoft game out of the water. Souls games, at least in my book, have always been about matching the many great aspects combined with difficulty to make them incredible, not only from a design perspective, but also from a personal standpoint. Elden Ring has the most amount of this in any Souls game I've ever played. Visually, level design wise, conceptually, world design wise, soundtrack, memorable twists, I could go on all day here. Elden Ring is not perfect, however. There are poor design choices within the game that can make the experience poor at times. An overabundance of certain enemies in the base game, making the enemy roster feel way smaller than it really is, especially in the DLC, along with some rushed areas that are too empty for their own good, reskins of vital bosses that actively ruin some of the main ones in the game, etc. However, adding up all of Elden Ring's constituent parts, both good and bad, doesn't accurately convey how I feel about the game. What I gained from this game as an experience is not comparable to any other game I've ever played, excluding my top one. What this game has offered to me, despite all of its poor qualities, was the most cinematic, fun, exhilarating, spectacle-filled, intense, euphoric, transformative, mesmerizing, difficult, evolutive, and most of all, endearing experience I've ever had with any piece of art ever. It's why it hurts me so much to see the Souls community in shambles over something I can clearly see and love so much. A cycle of conflict exacerbated through each new release for skill issues to descend deeper into ignorance, pushed by cultists who do understand the game but won't go about their message in any other way other than dismissive skill issue, get good, not really offering any form of advice or solution. I want to get this out to someone. Even if one person just realizes what they're doing wrong and can realize another way to play the game, or another way to enjoy it, or something they learned that they didn't know before, or had their mentality changed from the reserved and rigid ways they had before, whatever that might be in boss design, combat encounters, perspective on general quality, I hope this video added some positive value to your coming experiences with the game, and maybe influence your experience in Night Rain as well. Knowing everything you know now, is your mind still open to change?